Despite being one of DC's most popular heroes and being one of the main three stars of a decade-long TV universe, it's taken this long for The Flash to finally get an Iceberg. Oh, and a movie, but I feel like the Iceberg is more important. Anyways, welcome to the channel. I'm here to talk about some cancelled projects, weird stories, weird lore, cut content, etc. All about the definitive speedster superhero. And characters related to him, like Captain Cold, Gorilla Grodd, Kid Flash, etc. If you liked the video, drop a like. Comment below about your favorite entry on the Iceberg. Let me know if I missed something or I got something wrong. And finally, subscribe in case you want some more Iceberg content. I got some DC Icebergs, Marvel Icebergs, some videos on Transformers, Call of Duty, Godzilla, Mass Effect, cryptozoology, Halo, etc. Just a bunch of nerdy topics. And I got plenty more superhero icebergs in the works, like Wonder Woman, Green Lantern, the X-Men, etc. Last thing before I begin, I have talked about some topics relating to the Flash in some other videos, so if you're wondering why these topics aren't in the video, that's why. Without further ado, let's begin. Barry Allen in the DCAU. Appearing in Superman the Animated Series alongside both Justice League cartoons, Wally West was the Flash of the DCAU. However, he wasn't the first Flash in the DCAU. That would be Barry Allen. Maybe. While never shown in any of the shows, he does make appearances in some comics that may or may not be canon to the main DCAU. Though the episode Flash and Substance from Justice League Unlimited does suggest that Wally isn't the first Flash, and that Barry Allen, and maybe even Jay Garrick, both existed at some point in this universe. There's even a hint that Kid Flash existed in this universe, though in my headcanon that was just Wally's first costume. The 90s Flash series. Airing from September 20th, 1990 to May 18th, 1991, The Flash was the first live-action Flash series, though it wasn't the Flash's first appearance in live-action. Starring John Wesley Shipp as Barry Allen, the show followed Barry as he did some superhero stuff as the Flash. During the show, he battled against Captain Cold, Mirror Master, the Trickster, and many more villains, including some show original villains, like Deadly Nightshade and the Ghost. Despite the show getting a pretty positive reception, the show's ratings got lower and lower with every episode, and the budget for the show was pretty extreme for the time. For example, just the 4 costumes made for the Flash costed $100,000 to make, and each episode took around $1.6 million to make. The show also had an entire orchestra scoring the series, and Danny Elfman did the show's theme. So there was a lot of money being thrown into the show. But like I said, the show's ratings got worse and worse with every episode, so the decision was made to cancel the series after just one 22-episode season. However, thanks to the show's positive reception and later cult status, John Wesley Shipp would appear in the Arrowverse Flash series, this time playing Jay Garrick Flash. Mark Hamill, who played the Trickster in the original show, would return to play the role again. In fact, a lot of actors from the original series returned, like Corinne Bohrer and Alex Dazert, but none of them actually played the 90s versions of these characters. They played either new characters or just the Arrowverse's versions of those characters. But then, in 2018, John Wesley Shipp was given the opportunity to play the 1990s Barry Allen once again. But then a year later in the Crisis on Infinite Earths event, this Barry Allen died, so RIP. Barry Allen becomes a Blue Lantern. It's very common in DC Comics to see heroes temporarily become a Lantern. Batman became a Yellow Lantern, Supergirl became a Red Lantern, and Barry Allen Flash became a Blue Lantern. During the event, Blackest Night, the Guardian of the Universe member, Ganthet, and the Blue Lantern, Saint Walker, gave Barry Allen a Blue Lantern ring. Or I guess it makes more sense to say that the Blue Lantern ring chose Barry Allen, because Barry just constantly inspires hope in others. So Barry, now a Blue Lantern, battles a bunch of the Black Lanterns. For those that don't know, Blackest Night is about the entity, Necron, turning everyone in the DC universe who died into Black Lantern zombies. I'll talk about this some more in the eventual Green Lantern Iceberg. Anyways, Barry battles a bunch of the Black Lanterns, including Bart Allen, Reverse Flash, and Solovar. Thankfully, he's able to cure Bart Allen, with help from Wally West. Sadly, Barry Allen wouldn't be a Blue Lantern for very long, as right after Blackest Night ended, he lost connection with the ring. Although, in Hal Jordan and the Green Lantern Corps, issue 17, released in May 2017, it's shown that Barry might actually still have some connection with the Blue Lantern Corps. Deleted scenes. So despite not having a solo film until 2023, and even then it'd be kinda hard to consider that film a solo Flash film because since there's two different Batmans, Supergirl and Wonder Woman in the film, but whatever. Anyways, there have been some deleted scenes involving him in some other DCEU projects, and of course, his own film. So, I'm gonna go over some of them. In the 2016 Terminating Your Own Account squad, while not a deleted scene, Flash's cameo in the film, taking down Captain Boomerang, wasn't in the actual script, and was added in via reshoots. In fact, this scene was actually filmed by Zack Snyder on the Justice League set, with the Flash footage being stitched together with Captain Boomerang's footage, which was filmed by David Ayer. So Flash was an extremely late addition to the film. Yeah, it's not exactly a deleted scene, but I thought it was a neat fact, and I had no idea where to put this on the iceberg, so it's going here. In Justice League 2017, there was originally going to be a scene at the end of the film where Batman would give Barry a new superhero costume. However, the costume wouldn't have been shown. This was to allow the people working on the Flash film the chance to create the costume for that film, basically saving the surprise for Flash's solo film. In Peacemaker, the banter between Barry and Aquaman at the end of the show was originally supposed to be a little bit longer. In The Flash, originally Ray Fisher would have returned to play Cyborg, and would have been the co-lead of the film. However, after everything that happened with Ray Fisher, Joss Whedon, and Walter Hamada, Cyborg was written out of the film. Billy Crudup was also meant to return in the film as Henry Allen, but due to scheduling issues, he had to be recast. The film's ending went through various alterations, with the first ending being Barry returning to his universe and finding Supergirl and Michael Keaton's Batman, having replaced Superman and Ben Affleck Batman. Then the ending of the film was changed to include Superman and Wonder Woman showing up at the ending of the film alongside Supergirl and Michael Keaton Batman. And finally, the ending was changed to what it is now. The DCEU Flash in the Arrowverse. In 2019 and 2020, the Arrowverse was having an enormous crossover event based on the Crisis on Infinite Earths event. And because that story dealt with a variety of multiverses, the Arrowverse's adaptation of the story featured plenty of cameos from various DC universes, like the 60s Batman series, the Burdenverse, the Birds of Prey TV show, the 2011 Green Lantern film, Smallville, 2 different Kingdom Come style universes, and more. One of which was the DCEU. Appearing in the Arrow episode Crisis on Infinite Earths Part 4, the DCEU Flash had a brief interaction with the Arrowverse's Flash, played by Grant Gustin. While a fun little crossover, this is actually an extremely significant part in the DCEU Flash's story, as this is where he gets the idea to call himself the Flash. Superman vs. Flash. One of DC Comics' most iconic debates is who's faster, Superman or the Flash. This debate has been tackled in a variety of different comics, and even got a nod in the 2017 Justice League film. But what's the actual answer? Who's faster? Well, I guess it depends on the continuity. However, it has been shown in DC Comics' main continuity that the Flash is faster, with Barry Allen, Wally West, and Jay Garrick all being shown beating Superman. Although, sometimes Superman wins, and sometimes it's a tie, so I don't know, man. I'm still gonna say the Flash is faster. But what about other speedsters, like Sonic the Hedgehog, Quicksilver, Reverse Flash, Goku, Blur? A-Train, or Rainbow Dash. Can somebody please make a 2-hour analysis video going over that hypothetical race? I would watch the hell out of it. Gorilla Grodd tries to kill Obama. In the Season 3 episode of Legends of Tomorrow, guest starring John Noble, Gorilla Grodd shows up and tries to murder Barack Obama when he was in college.
Barack Obama, it will almost be an honor to kill you.
He's unable to, and is captured. And for the rest of the episode, the Legends of Tomorrow just hang out with Obama. This scene has been spread around online as a meme, because, it's pretty obvious why. A giant gorilla is threatening to kill Obama. The dude even says, "Make America Grodd again" in another scene. So why did Gorilla Grodd try to kill Obama? Well, it's actually pretty simple. It was to weaken the time demon Malos, who gave Grodd the ability to time travel. This isn't even the weirdest thing that's happened in Legends of Tomorrow. Bart Allen in the DCAU. As mentioned earlier, Wally West was the Flash of the DCAU. But Wally West wasn't originally going to star in the Justice League cartoons. That was going to be Bart Allen, who would have been known as Impulse. He was originally part of the core lineup for the original Justice League cartoon, and appeared in the concept video Justice League: The First Mission. This was a radically different version of the show, as while its lineup still had Batman, Wonder Woman, Superman, John Stewart Green Lantern, Hawkgirl and Martian Manhunter, Robin, Impulse, and a teenage girl version of Cyborg were there. The reason Impulse, Robin, and who I assume inspired Variant, although I have no evidence of that, were going to be in the show was because they were pitching the show to WB Kids, and that network loved having kid characters in their shows. Impulse would occasionally appear in DCAU comics, which again, may or may not be canon. The Flash's original origin. So Jay Garrick Flash's origin is pretty wild. Although admittedly all of the Flash's origins are pretty wild. But Jay Garrick's takes it to the next level. In 1938, around 3 in the morning, Jay Garrick was taking a smoke break in his laboratory. While smoking, he accidentally knocked over a bottle of hard water. This released some gases and knocked him out for 2 weeks. And that's it. No, really, when he woke up he had flash powers. Not much else to say here. The dude breathed in some hard water vapors and gained the ability to run like 1,000,000 miles per hour. Flash's appearance in Legends of Tomorrow. While Flash appeared in a handful of Legends of Tomorrow episodes, they were all either massive crossover events like Crisis on Infinite Earths or Crisis on Earth X, or it was just a voice cameo. However, he was originally going to show up in the first season of the show, where he would ask Captain Cold how he felt being a hero. This scene was featured in a behind-the-scenes video, but ended up being scrapped from the show. God of Death. In Justice League issue 44, released in September 2015, as part of the Darkseid War event, Barry Allen, alongside the rest of the Justice League, were battling good old Darkseid and the Anti-Monitor. However, during their fight, Barry was possessed by the new god's manifestation of death, the Black Racer. He corrupted Barry and took control over him. Or at least, he tried to. Barry was able to resist most of the Rider's possession. This led to the Black Racer being separated from Barry in Justice League issue 50, thanks to the daughter of Superwoman and Mazaz. But during this brief possession period, Barry was technically a god of death. And while being possessed, Barry killed Darkseid and gained the ability to kill pretty much anyone while running at speeds inconceivable to normal people. He also had access to the Black Rider's scythe, which could kill anyone with just a single hit. Oh yeah, and because it's a manifestation of death, Barry couldn't die while being possessed. Jesse Quick. First appearing in Justice Society of America issue 1, released in August of 1992, Jessie Chambers is the daughter of DC heroes Johnny Quick and Liberty Bell. Jessie was given superhuman speed powers by her father via formula. For those that don't know, Johnny Quick is able to get his powers because he figured out, like, the Speed Force formula. So all he has to do is just, like, say the formula out loud and he gets powers. So, it's the same thing with his daughter. Her father wanted her to become a superhero, but she was like, nah, I think I'm gonna study. Which, I mean, fair enough, but I mean, you don't get to wear a cool costume, so... Or I guess you could. I guess you could wear a superhero costume to college. Probably be laughed at, but, you know, you could. But she would eventually give in and become a superhero after the Justice Society re-emerged. She found herself helping the team during a mission which convinced her to give up the books and fight crime. Who needs books when you can run super fast? And heal really quickly. And lift things using super strength. Yeah, Jessie Chambers, or Jessie Quick, has quite a few powers. She went on to appear in various different comics, joining the Justice League and Titans, having a kid, and battling countless villains. She would return to the New 52 in Supergirl, The Fastest Woman Alive, released in July 2017. Well, kinda. She really returned in The Flash issue 758, released in July 2020, since that Supergirl comic was sponsored by Snickers, so I don't think it's actually canon. It also doesn't fit with the timeline, so yeah, it's not canon. After the events of Flashpoint, Jessie Quick was trapped in the Speed Force. Luckily for her, Barry Allen would find her and rescue her, and she would become part of the Flash family. Jessie Quick has appeared in a few pieces of media, most notably in the Flash TV show, though she's also appeared in Injustice 2 and DC Legends. Flashpoint. Released from May to August 2011, Flashpoint is a miniseries that changed the entirety of DC Comics. Most people know this by now, but Flashpoint served as a reboot to DC's main comic continuity. Written by Jeff Johns, Flashpoint tells the story of Barry Allen going back in time to save his mother from being murdered, and his father being falsely imprisoned. But doing that causes some pretty major things to change in the DC universe, due to him pulling in all the Speed Force into himself. This caused a bunch of the people Barry knew to have their histories changed, like Bruce Wayne dying as a kid, while Thomas Wayne became Batman, and Martha Wayne became the Joker. Wonder Woman and the Amazons are now at war with Aquaman and the Atlanteans. Captain Cold is now a superhero. And Kal-El was captured by the US government, and never allowed to become Superman. Basically, it's a nightmare world where nothing right is happening. But that's not all. Thawne is here, and he's doing some mean old stuff like usual. He's also responsible for telling Barry that he was the one that caused Flashpoint. Yeah, up until this point, it was a mystery as to who caused the timeline change. Turns out it was Barry. After a giant fight, Barry travels through time and stops himself from saving his mom. And reality is fixed. Except not really, and a new reality is created, the New 52 universe. This was made out of 3 different universes, the DC universe, the Vertigo universe, and the Wildstorm universe. While the main series consisted of just 5 issues, like with a lot of comic events, the actual event was much larger, totaling at 66 issues, counting tie-ins and one-shots. It's become one of, if not the most famous Flash storyline, and it's been referenced in various episodes of The Flash and Legends of Tomorrow. It got an entire animated adaptation in 2013, and various Flashpoint designs have appeared in various video games, like Injustice and Arkham Knight. And of course, 2023's The Flash takes heavy influence from the storyline. Oh yeah, and Flashpoint's got a sequel in 2022 called Flashpoint Beyond. That doesn't star The Flash, so I won't be talking about it. Johnny Quick. First appearing in Justice League of America issue 29, released in August of 1964, Johnny Quick, not to be confused with the hero Johnny Quick, was a member of the Crime Syndicate of America, which, as the name suggests, is a bad guy thing. In fact, it's the evil version of the Justice League on Earth 3. So he was simply an evil version of the Flash, specifically Barry Allen. Although he didn't really do all that much. Let me rephrase that actually. He did appear quite a few times, but nothing super notable ever really happened with him. We don't even know how he got his powers, or his history prior to joining the Crime Syndicate. Usually when the Crime Syndicate of America showed up to fight the Justice League, the focus was either on Ultraman or Superwoman, but he was always there too, taking part in battles to conquer the world. That was until he died during Crisis on Infinite Earths, alongside pretty much everyone in his dimension. As for his powers, he had super speed, but he required a helmet to make him like a speedster. He was still super fast without the helmet, but the helmet is what really made him a speedster. Jonathan Allen would be introduced into the post-New 52 world in Justice League issue 23, released in October 2013. This time, he joined the crime syndicate alongside his girlfriend, Rhonda Pineda, aka Atomica, basically the evil version of the Atom. He, alongside the crime syndicate, showed up in the main DC universe to cause some chaos. He even defeated all of the Teen Titans and murdered the entirety of Doom Patrol. Together, the crime syndicate captured most of the Justice League members and began their very brief reign of terror. I say very brief because the Injustice League showed up and beat them. In fact, Johnny and his girlfriend's deaths were fairly brutal, with Captain Cold freezing one of his legs and then shattering it. And as Johnny Quick was crawling away, he got his neck snapped. Then Atomica got stomped on by Lex Luthor. However, this wasn't the end for Johnny Quick, as he was resurrected during the Year of the Villain event, only to die again very quickly. But then, he was brought back to life again by Batman of Earth Zero in order to help him fight the Batman Who Laughs. As for his appearances in other media, Johnny Quick has appeared in Crisis on Two Earths, Crime Syndicate Earth, LEGO DC Supervillains, and DC Universe Online. The Flash's delays. So the Flash movie is notable for a couple of reasons. It's one of the biggest box office bombs of all time, and it was supposed to come out quite a while ago. Originally, The Flash was going to be released on March 23rd, 2018, with Phil Lord and Chris Miller writing a treatment for it. Multiple writers and directors came on and off the project, leading Warner Bros. To delay the film to July 1st, 2022. Now the plan for this film was that it was going to be an adaptation of Flashpoint to reboot the DCEU. More writers and directors were brought on, like the directing duo John Francis DeLay and Jonathan Goldstein, Andy Muschietti, and the legendary Grant Morrison. Then the film's release date was actually pushed up to June 3rd, 2022. And then it got delayed again to November 4th, 2022. Then it got delayed again to June 23rd, 2023. And then finally, it was decided to release the film earlier on June 16th, 2023. So after all this time, all the controversies, all the different writers, directors, scripts, etc., after spending $220 million on the film, and who knows on the marketing, the film bombed, and Warner Bros. Lost $200 million. Max Mercury. First appearing in Flash issue 76, released in May 1993, Max was a member of the US military in the 1830s, when he witnessed a bunch of US soldiers murdering pretty much every single Native American in the Blackfoot tribe. In his dying breath, one of the Native Americans, a shaman, used his magic powers to give Max super speed powers, because they were friends. He then became the superhero Windrunner. He would spend the next few years protecting the natives. He then decided to run through time into the 1940s, where he took up the mantle of Max Mercury and became friends with Jay Garrick and Johnny Quick. Not the crime syndicate one. Why are they both called Johnny Quick? Max tried to convince the pair that he traveled here from the 19th century through the Speed Force, but the other two speedsters were like, Speed Force? We're G-Force kind of guys. They actually just didn't believe him. I just wanted to reference G-Force. I'm sorry. For a long time, Max continued his superhero crime fighting career, but would eventually retire. That was until he met Bart Allen, and because they both knew about the Speed Force, the two became fast friends, and Max became a mentor to Bart. Everything was going great, until he found out that he had a daughter he never knew about, named Helen. Luckily for him, his daughter seemed to like him. Unfortunately for him, she liked him a little too much. She didn't actually know that he was her father, so when they met, she started flirting with him. Meanwhile, Bart Allen, who didn't know that she was his daughter, was like, "Dude, you should hook up with her." And meanwhile, Max Mercury is just like, No, Bart, no, Bart, this is bad, this is really bad. This all changed, however, when Max found his daughter being beaten by her ex-husband, and Max snapped, revealing his identity as her father. As for Max's powers, he's got your standard speedster abilities like super speed, super stamina, he can phase through objects, and has super healing. He's also a master at kung fu, he's fluent in about 6 different languages, and can perform hyper meditation, which allows him to sense voices in the Speed Force. Max would return in the post-New 52 universe in The Flash issue 26, released in September 2017, and was living in the Speed Force post-Flashpoint, just like Jesse Quick. Though he was originally still from the 19th century, this time being from the Old West. Thanks to Barry Allen, he was able to escape and rejoin the Flash family. Despite being a fairly famous speedster, Max Mercury has only appeared in one piece of media outside the comics, that being The Flash in Season 9. In fact, the very final episode of the entire show, where he's chosen by Barry to become a speedster. Thawne becomes Flash. So Reverse Flash's whole thing is that he just wants to troll the Flash. I know he's got like other plans like stealing money and all that, but his main goal in life is just to make Barry Allen's life a living hell. Like, nobody hates the Flash more than Thawne. And in the Legion of Zoom story arc from 2020, Reverse Flash creates his own Flash family called the Legion of Zoom, although it's also called the Reverse Flash family. Dude grabs a bunch of people from the past, like Captain Cold, Trickster, Golden Glider, Gorilla Grodd, etc. Dude even brings in the Tornado Twins, which I'll talk about a little bit later. But that's not the end of the plan. Reverse Flash decides, you know what? I'm gonna become you. And so, he uses the negative speed force to vibrate his body inside of Barry Allen's and fuse with Barry's very atoms. Now inside Barry Allen's body, Thawne decides to do some pretty wacky stuff, like try and dig up Barry Allen's mom's grave so he can erase Barry Allen's mind by using temporal energy stored in her corpse. Just your average troll, just your average, Minnesota Burns, you're just doing a little bit of trolling. Luckily for Barry, he was able to get his mind back before any of this happened, and the two battled it out, which resulted in Thawne's incarnation of Reverse Flash to be wiped from existence, until in like 3 years when he's brought back. Negative Flash. First appearing in The Flash issue 3, released in September 2016, Mina Dewan was your average everyday scientist when, a Speed Force storm rolled into town and zapped her with the Speed Force, giving her a ton of Flash powers. She took on the name Fast Track and became a superhero who would team up with the Flash to train speedster superheroes in training. Just one problem. Some of the speedster students that they were going to teach were murdered by the speedster serial killer Godspeed. Mina then took part in an investigation to discover Godspeed's identity, and part of this investigation required her to infiltrate the criminal organization, the Black Hole. Turns out, the dude that she thought was Godspeed, Dr. Joseph Carver, wasn't. But he did become a giant Speed Force monster, so he kinda needed to be taken out anyways. Afterwards, all seemed good, until Godspeed showed back up and murdered some more students. And then Gorilla Grodd showed up and brainwashed Mina. Meanwhile, Barry Allen had been infected by the negative Speed Force. So it was just like, not a great time to be a superhero in Central City. Grodd then had Mina steal the negative Speed Force from Barry, thus becoming Negative Flash. But luckily, she was freed from his control in Flash issue 43, released in March 2018, and since has become a recurring ally to Barry Allen, Wally West, and the rest of the Flash family. As for her powers, Negative Flash has most of Flash's abilities, like super speed, stamina, etc., but also has some bonus powers thanks to all that negative Speed Force being inside her, like the ability to fire off dark lightning bolts from her hands. She's also dying, because of the negative Speed Force inside her body. It's conflicting with the normal Speed Force in her, so she's just slowly dying. As for her appearances outside the comics, Mina has only appeared in The Flash, making her debut as Fast Track during the show's 8th season. The Top. First appearing in The Flash issue 122, released in August of 1961, Roscoe Dillon was obsessed with spinning tops. It all started when he was a kid and found one in an attic, and he was just like, yeah, I'm thinking I'm gonna dedicate the rest of my life to this. And boy did he. When he became an adult, he quickly fell into a life of crime, using top-based weapons to rob places. Dude even taught himself how to spin around like a top. He spun around so fast, it somehow made him smarter, like his brain power would increase. I guess this gave him quite the ego, because he declared to the world that if he wasn't declared the ruler of Earth, he would destroy half the planet. This did not end well for him, and he was arrested. He would continue to be a recurring Flash villain for quite some time, working alongside people like Mirror Master, and even becoming the ice skating coach to Captain Cold's sister. The two even dated for a bit. Sadly for the Top, he would eventually die. However, this wouldn't be the end of him, as his ghost began doing crimes, like possessing Henry Allen. After this whole Barry Allen's dad thing didn't work out very well, he tried to find a new body. And he did. But while possessing Barry's dad, he learned about the Flash's true identity, Barry Allen. So he went after the Flash and did some more crimes. But then Barry Allen was just like, alright, I'm done. Yo, Zatanna, can you just use some magic to turn Top's ghost into a good guy? And she did. The Top magically became a good guy and started working with the Flash for a bit. That was until he started to go insane due to the regret he was feeling at his past actions. After this, Top's ghost bailed from the body he was possessing, and he would never return. Just kidding, he then possessed the vice president candidate for the politician Jacob Cartwright. While possessed, he sent the villain Pied Piper, I'll talk about him a little bit later, a letter saying, "Hey, I'm gonna put in a bunch of policies targeting gay people once I'm elected." This was an attempt at getting Pied Piper to assassinate Jacob Cartwright. It didn't work, and Top's spirit bailed again. When it comes to his powers, the Top can spin at superhuman speeds using telekinesis, and has a ton of gadgets and weapons, like a tornado top, an electro top, an atomic grenade, a flaming gas top, a black light top, an energy top, time-based top bombs. The dude just loves tops. The Top would then be introduced in the post-New 52 world in the Flash Annual Issue 4, released in September 2015, and his origin was very different. Instead of being obsessed with tops as a kid, he was struck by lightning when he was a kid, and this somehow gave him the ability to turn into a living tornado. And since then, he hasn't really done all that much, at least compared to his old self. As for his appearances in other pieces of media, he's shown up in Batman the Brave and the Bold, Justice League Unlimited, the Arrowverse, now a woman, and Justice League The Flashpoint Paradox.
The Flash will continue in a moment.
DC. Incredible. Action. Astonishing. Adventure. The coolest heroes. The bravest heroines. And the most outrageous villain.
Too tough for TV.
In the universe. DC Comics. Read them and love them.
Captain Boomerang is a brony. Revealed in a 2016 interview with David Ayer, it was confirmed that Captain Boomerang in the DCEU is a brony. In the film, you can see him with a My Little Pony-like plushie called Pinkie. This was apparently a non-copyrighted version of Pinkie Pie. David Ayer went on to say, quote, "Yes, he's a brony, which is fine. I think it's a good thing, and it gives him a little hobby besides robbing banks." Original casting. Like with any show or movie, not every actor you see in the film was originally meant to portray the character they portrayed. Another actor was looked at to play that role. So here's some actors who almost played characters related to the Flash. And by related to the Flash, I mean just Barry Allen and Iris West, because for some reason I can't find any casting information about like Captain Boomerang or Wally West, or like anyone. Like for the Flash TV show, the Arrowverse in general, or like the DCEU. I don't know why. No one's talked about it, so I don't know. As for the 1990s Barry Allen, originally Jack Coleman and Richard Burgi were considered for the role. When it comes to the DCEU Barry Allen, Scott Porter, Matthew Fox, and Ryan Quatten were considered for the role. As for the DCEU Iris West, Rita Ora and Lucy Boyton were considered for the role. As for the CW Barry Allen, James McKay, Matt Barr, Jeremy Jordan, Mike Kolonowski, and Andy Mientis were considered for the role. And finally, as for the CW Iris West, Kiki Palmer and Sierra Renee were both considered for the role. The Flash talks about AIDS. Superheroes are no stranger to PSAs. In 1994, DC Comics published a variety of different one-page PSAs about AIDS. There was a Robin one, a Green Lantern one, a Teen Titans one, a Booster Gold one, and a Flash one. In his PSA, Flash finds some kids spreading some misinformation about AIDS. The kid is just like, "I'm sorry, man, I was just joking." And the Flash is like, "You idiot, that's just gonna create prejudice against people who have AIDS. Think, idiot." And then, to assert his dominance, he dunks on them. What a legend.
Give him the facts, coach.
You can't get AIDS from casual contact. Hugging, touching, they're okay.
Barry Allen x Caitlin Snow. During the first season of CW's The Flash, writers on the show debated on having Barry Allen and Caitlin Snow date. Their relationship wouldn't be permanent, as they had always planned on doing the classic Barry x Iris romance. This romance was simply going to be used to stall the relationship. Basically, push it back a few seasons. And this was going to happen. It's why there are so many scenes between the pair in Season 1. It was only stopped when Grant Gustin came to the writers and insisted they do the Iris West romance plot way earlier than planned. Rainbow Raider. First appearing in The Flash issue 286, released in June 1980, Roy G. Bigelow was a child who wanted to become a painter. But there was one problem. He was colorblind. His dad, sad that his son was colorblind, created some goggles that would cure him of his colorblindness. But I guess he didn't want his son to have these goggles too early. Roy only got the goggles when his father was on his deathbed. Sadly for Roy, this didn't cure him, but instead, they shot out beams of light that became solid objects, along with a bunch of other abilities, like blind people, influence the emotions of others, and turn invisible. Roy then decided he couldn't continue his career in art because of his colorblindness. Which is not, yeah, he could have kept doing that, actually. He could have kept doing being an artist. And so he decided to become a criminal instead, coming face to face with the Flash various times. His main targets were art galleries and art museums, with him claiming that because of his colorblindness, nobody should be allowed to see art. This would all end in The Flash issue 183, released in April 2002, where he was killed by Blacksmith. But Rainbow Raider's legacy would live on with the villain group, the Rainbow Raiders. First appearing in The Flash issue 217, released in February 2005, these guys came together to honor Rainbow Raider, and committed crimes inspired by the Rainbow villain's previous criminal actions. They didn't last long. As in Untold Tales of Blackest Night, released in December 2010, the entire team committed Bye Bye Man Yourself via drinking poison. This was their third appearance overall. Anyways, Rainbow Raider would be introduced in the post-New 52 universe in The Flash issue 23.1, released in November 2013. It's presumed that most of his history was the same, except now he went by the name Chroma. He was then killed by Gorilla Grodd and had his head mounted on a pike. But then, years later, due to some timeline goofs, thanks to Dr. Manhattan and DC Rebirth, Rainbow Raider was alive again, and he hasn't really done much. As for his appearances in other media, he's appeared in LEGO Batman 3 Beyond Gotham, Teen Titans Go, and has had 2 different adaptations on The Flash. The original appears in Season 1 and Season 9, while a woman version named Carrie Bates appeared in Season 7. Justice U. So the Arrowverse finally came to an end on May 24th, 2023, with the final episode of The Flash. However, that wasn't originally the plan. In January 2022, it was announced that a new show set in the Arrowverse was being created, called Justice U, and would star John Diggle, a prominent Arrowverse character that's appeared in Arrow, Supergirl, The Flash, Superman and Lois, when it was canon, Batwoman, and Legends of Tomorrow. The show would be about John Diggle training 5 metahumans at a university. This show wouldn't get very far into development, with a pilot not even being filmed. And in May 2023, it was announced that the CW decided against making Justice U. And before somebody says, John Diggle isn't a Flash character, why are you talking about this? I'm talking about this because he was in The Flash a couple times, and I am never making an Arrowverse Iceberg, so I will probably never get another chance to talk about this show. Also, because it was cancelled, Flash became the final Arrowverse show. Chunk. First appearing in The Flash issue 9, released in February of 1988, Chester P. Runk was a genius. He was so smart that he created a teleportation device. However, this machine didn't really work very well and blew up, resulting in Chester gaining super strength and the ability to teleport anywhere he wanted to. He could also visit a pocket dimension called the Void whenever he wanted to. But it wasn't just powers he got from this explosion. The explosion also created the equivalent of a black hole inside of him. That was actually the Void. And if he didn't eat 47 times his own mass, he would implode and be sent into another dimension. But don't feel too bad for him, because Chester, now going by the name Chunk, had actually sent a lot of people into the Void. People who annoyed him, like his therapist, a woman who rejected him, and even just a dude who cut him off at an intersection. Overall, he sent over 100 people into the Void. So yeah, he kinda needed to be stopped. He came into conflict with the Flash during one of his crime sprees, eating stuff he found at art galleries and jewelry stores, like diamonds. Their fight was brief, however, because Chunk sent Flash into the Void. Though in the Void, Flash was able to convince him to release him and about a dozen others. Shortly after releasing his Void prisoners, Chunk vanished, and wouldn't return for some time. But when he did, he was seemingly reformed, now owning a business called Chunk Incorporated. Basically, people would pay him to make things disappear. He also now had control over his black hole thingy inside of him. And after that, he became an ally to the Flash, oftentimes giving him money and using his powers to help him. Chunk made his return in the post-New 52 universe in The Flash issue 49, released in April 2016. However, he doesn't have his powers, and he's significantly younger than his original counterpart. As for his appearances in other media, he's only appeared in the Flash TV series. Flushman. In Argentina, Flash isn't actually known as the Flash. Instead, he's known as Flushman. Why is this? Well, it all started with a trademark dispute involving the name Flash. You see, in Argentina, the word flashier is a slang term that means a bunch of things, ranging from to flash, tripping out, falling in love, etc. This led to a gossip magazine being created called Flash. This magazine ran from the early 1980s to the mid-2000s, and it was extremely popular in Argentina. And so, in 1990, when the company Perfil Editorial got the rights to translate and distribute DC Comics in Argentina, the magazine threatened to sue the company if they released any Flash comics. So a higher up at the company said, let's just call him Flushman. And the rest is history. DC Comics didn't really reference this all that much, so most fans outside of Argentina didn't know this was a thing. That was until The Flash issue 781, released in April 2022. In this issue, Wally West is hanging out with Kid Flash, when suddenly an Argentinian kid walks up to the pair and calls Wally Flushman. Wally says that he'll explain this to Kid Flash later, as it's a whole thing. And the comic directly tells readers to Google it. From my understanding and research, this is the first time DC Comics have ever actually referenced this. David S. Goyer's Flash film. In 2004, David S. Goyer was hired by Warner Bros. To write the script and direct a film based on The Flash. Goyer worked on the film until 2007, when he announced that he had dropped out of the project due to creative differences. As for the film's plot, the film would open up with Barry Allen as the Flash, living with his wife Iris West and his nephew Wally West. Everything's going great, when suddenly Wally gets kidnapped by the villain Vector Vesp, aka the Turtle. Barry goes to rescue him, but dies. Kinda. But his power gets transferred to Wally West, while a police officer named Hunter Zolomon gets crippled by an explosion. The film would flash forward around 12 years and... Oh, that was I didn't mean to do that. I didn't mean to do that pun. Anyways, there's a time jump of 12 years, and Wally West is not having a good day, when suddenly he gets zapped with lightning after hearing Barry's voice. This activates his powers, and he becomes the Flash. Meanwhile, Turtle has his henchmen stalk Wally West while he's in jail. Wally then becomes famous as the Flash, not by fighting crime, but by doing your average celebrity stuff, signing autographs, showing off, and all that kind of stuff. Basically, he's caught up in the fame, and yeah, he doesn't actually have a secret identity in this film. Everyone knows it's him. This all changes when he has to rescue Hunter Zolomon, as the plane he's in is about to crash. After saving him, Wally decides to become a hero, and then it's revealed that Hunter can actually walk, and that he's the villain, Professor Zoom, or Reverse Flash, whichever one you like. There's a big old fight, and Wally gets sent into the Speed Force, where he meets Barry, who's not actually dead. Well, kinda. He's stuck in the Speed Force and can't get out. He's like, alright Wally, that's cool that you saw me and everything, but you need to go fight the Turtle and Zoom. Also, can you tell Iris that I love her? And Wally's just like, okay. So Wally gets out of the Speed Force and beats them up. Well, he beats up Zoom. While he was in the Speed Force, Zoom straight up murdered Turtle, giving him a heart attack, so he's dead. So yeah, Zoom gets beaten up and the day is saved. As for the film's cast, nobody was casted, but David S. Goyer was looking at Ryan Reynolds to play Wally West. CW Flash Season 10 plans. So Flash Season 9 wasn't supposed to be the final season of the show. That was going to be Season 10. But for multiple reasons, Season 9 ended up being the final one. We actually know quite a bit about the plans for the final season. Here's some of the concepts that were being discussed. Wally West would return for a major storyline that would deal with his dark past resurfacing. There was also going to be an adaptation of Blackest Night, which would have been a major crossover event. There was also going to be a storyline called The Forever War, and featured a ton of characters battling against the show original villain, Chronarch. There would have also been another alien invasion arc that would have seen S.T.A.R and his alien army invade Earth again. Barry would be outmatched by the aliens, and would be saved by the Justice League. There was also going to be another crossover with Legends of Tomorrow that would have had Barry get the Legends and Booster Gold out of time jail. And finally, Joe and Cecil West's marriage would be tested, as Joe decides that Central City is becoming far too dangerous to live in. Also, apparently, nobody was going to die in the final season. At least good guys. Pied Piper. First appearing in The Flash issue 106, released in May of 1959, Hartley Rathaway was born deaf, and after receiving some hearing implants, he became obsessed with the concept of sound. And in his obsession, he created a type of hypnotism through music, along with the ability to hurt people with sounds. Taking up the mantle of the Pied Piper, based on the fairy tale of the same name, Hartley started doing crimes using music, and a lot of rats. Man used a lot of rats in his crimes. He was a fairly regular Flash villain for a while, up until the aftermath of Crisis on Infinite Earths. Because Barry Allen died in that event, Keystone City didn't have a Flash, so Hartley retired from crime. Yeah, he had a change of heart. Instead of doing crime, Hartley decided to become a socialist and went around helping the poor and the homeless, gathering food for them and helping them find places to squat. And when Wally West moved to Keystone City in order to do some Flash stuff, Hartley decided to help Wally West fight crime. He also came out as gay around this time. He continued to be a good guy for a while, until one day, one of his former criminal friends, Mirror Master, had enough of this, so he framed Hartley for the murder of his own parents. This was the beginning of Pied Piper's descent back into villainy, as during the Countdown to Final Crisis event, he fell back into crime, though he still wanted to help people. For example, during a job with the Rogues, he had a bunch of money that Mirror Master stole transferred to a charity to help homeless kids. Shortly after that, Pied Piper had his big moment. He was captured by S.T.A.R and brought to Apokolips, so he could activate the anti-life equation with his music. Pied Piper said, nah, and then used his music to kill S.T.A.R and then destroy Apokolips. As for Pied Piper's powers, his main weapon is his flute, which can hypnotize anyone. And like I mentioned earlier, he often used it on rats. He's also got these sonic tuning forks, which can send out sounds that can paralyze people. Pied Piper would make his return in the post-New 52 universe in The Flash issue 8, released in June 2012. And he's been a good guy ever since, even sharing an apartment with Barry Allen for a time. As for his appearances in other media, Pied Piper has appeared in multiple seasons of The Flash, along with Justice League The Flashpoint Paradox, DC Universe Online, Justice League Unlimited, and the 1970s Wonder Woman show, although his real name was changed in that show. Best Laid Plans. Best Laid Plans is an in-universe romance novel created by Linda Park, the wife of Wally West. The novel is pretty unique, because instead of just being completely fiction, Linda based the novel's protagonists off of her and her husband. Wally West is renamed into Billy East. Very clever. In this story, Billy East is a superpowered hero from space who uses force fields and his trusty jetpack to save the day. His design is also a parody of those Fabio romance novel covers. As for Linda, she's known as Beth Hunter, who's an aspiring writer. Billy saves her from a monster, and the two head off on an adventure to stop the evil villain Kadabra and his henchmen of unnamed villains who are all based on existing villains, like Tar Pit and King Shark. This novel first appeared in The Flash 2022 Annual, released in October of 2022. Deceased. Released from July to December 2019, and written by Tom Taylor, Deceased is a 6-issue miniseries taking place in an alternate universe where a corrupted version of the anti-life equation has created a zombie apocalypse on Earth. These zombies, known as the anti-living, spread around the globe pretty quickly, and kill and infect a variety of different heroes, like Batman, Robin, Martian Manhunter, Catwoman, Power Girl, Hawk Girl, etc. And sadly, Barry Allen fell victim to the virus. Originally, he went into hiding alongside Wally West, as Batman had warned them the dangers if they got infected. He did hide out for a little while, but Superman and Green Lantern both showed up and recruited them into their resistance. They probably should have stayed hiding though, as while Barry was able to stay alive for a little while, he was eventually infected by Martian Manhunter. Now a zombie, he went around trying to infect people at super speeds. Luckily, Zombie Barry was killed by Superman, who literally smashed into him at supersonic speeds. But then the worst thing imaginable happened. Barry's last actions were scratching Superman, which infected him. In his final moments before becoming a zombie, Superman asked Wally West to put Lois Lane, Martha Kent, and Superman's son into the Speed Force, so he couldn't infect them. Wally was one of the few who survived the apocalypse, and traveled with the other survivors to a new planet they named Earth-2, in order to start over there. Deceased was received pretty well, and received 2 sequels, Dead Planet and War of the Undead Gods. Lady Flash. First appearing in The Flash issue 7, released in December of 1987, Ivana Kristina Borodin Molotova, or Christina as I'm going to call her from now on, was a human test subject alongside 2 other children named Gregor and Bolslaw. They were taken in by the Soviet Union's military in order to see if the Soviets could replicate the Flash's powers. And it worked. Christina, Gregor, and Bolslaw were all given superhuman speed powers, and became the supervillain group, the Blue Trinity. However, they weren't the only ones given powers. There was also the Red Trinity. These guys would turn on the Soviet Union and battle the Blue Trinity. Afterwards, they'd immigrate to America and become the superhero group Capitalist Couriers. Anyways, Christina and the Blue Trinity, which sounds like a band, battled the Flash and Red Trinity a few times under orders from the Soviet Union, and later Rudy West, one of Iris West's brothers and the father of Wally West. It turns out that Rudy West had become an acolyte for the Manhunters, and so he had Blue Trinity capture Flash and bring him to a base run by the Manhunters. However, Blue Trinity would fail in their mission, and were then sold by the Manhunters to Vandal Savage, who decided to experiment on them, and made them addicted to the drug Velocity 9. Now that she was addicted to Velocity 9, Christina would do anything for the drug, and so Vandal Savage had her take up the mantle of Lady Flash. This didn't last very long, and she eventually betrayed him, with Flash then telling her that she earned that costume. So she's a good guy now, right? No. When she showed back up, she was a villain again. And it was revealed that she was working for Vandal Savage. Again. Because she thought that he loved her. She died shortly afterwards. As for Christina's powers, she's got superhuman speed, and that's pretty much it. She would make her return in the post-New 52 world in Doomsday Clock issue 5, released in July 2018. She's part of the Russian superhero group People's Heroes, and she's returned to using the name Lady Flash. Although she hasn't really done anything since her introduction. Although we do know that she's a lot more powerful than her old self, now having enhanced healing and the ability to phase through objects. As for Lady Flash's appearances in other media, she doesn't technically have any, although Nora West Allen from the Flash CW series has gone by the name Lady Flash, although her main hero name is XS. Fiona Webb. First appearing in The Flash issue 285, released in May of 1980, Beverly Lewis worked under a gang leader named Ross Malverk, and witnessed a murder, and because she testified against him in court, she needed to go into the Witness Protection Program as Fiona Webb. She also had the memories of the murder she witnessed be removed from her via hypnosis, so it was like a super Witness Protection Program. She then moved to the Central City and eventually began dating Barry Allen. They fell deeply in love and were gonna get married, but that's when the Reverse Flash walked in and was like, "I'm gonna kill your fiancé, Barry, just like how I killed Iris." And then Barry killed him. But now that Reverse Flash was dead, they could get married. Right? Nope. Fiona had a mental breakdown at the altar. This was because, well, she was almost killed, and because Barry never showed up to the altar. Except he did. Because, as mentioned before, he killed Reverse Flash. But Fiona didn't know that Barry was the Flash. Yeah, Barry never told her that. After this, she basically vanished from the comics. She did appear during the Flash's trial, but besides this minor cameo, she just disappeared from the comics altogether. To this day, Fiona has never appeared in any pieces of media outside the comics, nor has she returned to the post-New 52 world. Flash fights vegetables. In The Flash issue 152, released in May of 1965, Barry Allen goes up against his greatest foe yet: vegetables. In this story, Professor West accidentally winds up walking into the hideout of some Soviet spies. There he shows them his newest invention, the Proton Ray, a ray that supersizes vegetables. And, fruits. They say it only works on vegetables, but grapes aren't vegetables, so... Anyways, the Soviets capture the professor, and Barry Allen goes searching for him. He ends up finding him pretty quickly, and briefly battles the spies, only to then get knocked out when one of these super grapes falls to the ground and explodes. Turns out, the Proton Ray Professor West made actually turns fruits and vegetables into bombs. They try to escape via boat, but Flash shows back up and then beats everyone up and saves the day. Barry then tells Iris that her father's an idiot and more than likely will never get his Proton Ray working ever again. Also, throughout the story, the Soviets keep referring to the Flash as the Flasher. Abracadabra. First appearing in The Flash issue 128, released in May of 1962, Citizen Abra was a magician living in the 64th century. This was a very difficult job, because by this point in time, nobody was entertained by magic, because science can pretty much do anything. Dude was pretty sad until he found out about a time machine being invented, so he broke into the lab where the machine was being built, and used it to travel back to the 20th century, a time in which people were impressed with magic. At least he thought so. Turns out, people in the 20th century were more interested in baseball, a new statue being built, and some other stuff. Probably TV too. Craving attention, he decided to steal the statue being built. And this was just one of the many things he would steal during his criminal career. He would take up the supervillain name of Abracadabra, and become a recurring foe for the Flash, until he was sent back to the 64th century. And police in the 64th century decided to make it a law that anyone near Abracadabra had to clap and cheer for him in order to give him the attention he craved so he wouldn't commit any more crimes. What a bizarre solution. But that didn't stop him, and he would eventually return to the 20th century, and mess with Barry Allen during his trial for killing Reverse Flash. Eventually, Kadabra would become disfigured after an explosion, but would still commit crime. That was until some random woman from the future came to the past and brought him back to the 64th century alongside Wally West. There, the two would actually work together to overthrow the corrupt government of the future. After beating up the government, Wally was returned to the 20th century, alongside Abracadabra, as Wally didn't want him to become the new leader of the 64th century, and so he stayed in the 20th century, continuing to be a villain. As for his powers, Abracadabra uses technology from the future to replicate magic. Although, after making a deal with the demon Neuron, he was given actual magic powers, like fireballs and energy blasts. He's also got a Hypno Ray, which allows him to hypnotize anyone he wants. Abracadabra would be introduced to the post-New 52 world in Titans Issue 1, released in September of 2016. In this new timeline, he actually trapped Wally West in the Speed Force and made the entire world forget about him. But in doing so, he also lost all of his powers, and he forgot who he was. Though when Wally West broke out of the Speed Force, he received his memories back. As for his appearances in other media, Abracadabra has appeared in the CW Flash series, Young Justice, DC Universe Online, Justice League Unlimited, and Batman the Brave and the Bold. Cancelled Flash game. Developed by Bottle Rocket Entertainment, The Flash, the Fastest Man Alive, is one of the most famous cancelled superhero video games. In development from the mid to late 2000s, the game was going to be an open-world game, much like the Arkham series or Insomniac's Spider-Man. Wally West would have been the main playable character, and you'd be able to explore two massive cities, Central City and Keystone City. As for the game's villains, Flash would face off against a ton of his rogues gallery, like Gorilla Grodd, Abracadabra, The Top, Pied Piper, Tar Pit, Captain Boomerang, Weather Wizard, Trickster, Reverse Flash, Captain Cold, etc. Interestingly, the game would have had you use super speed in real time, meaning that the game wouldn't go slow-mo when you run super fast. If you built up enough speed, you'd be able to grind on rails and run up buildings. The game would have also featured a morality system called the Hero Rating. Basically, if you do a bunch of good stuff, you'll get rewarded, but if you ignore hero work, you'll be punished. Besides the game's main story, there would have also been various side quests and random events where Flash would either have to fight criminals or rescue civilians from accidents. Comics legend Marv Wolfman was also overseeing the game's story. Jay Garrick would have also appeared in the game's story, having been captured by the main bad guy group of the game. They would use his blood to power up their henchmen so they could fight Wally West. The game was also planned to have a multiplayer mode that was basically going to be a racing mode. You would be able to play as a variety of different characters, like Wally West, Jay Garrick, Max Mercury, Christina, Superman, Johnny Quick, John Fox, Barry Allen, The Rival, Jesse Quick, Black Flash, Kid Flash, Reverse Flash, and more. This mode would support up to 4 players. So why didn't this game happen? Alvin and the Chipmunks the video game. Okay, I'm kinda joking, but I'm also kinda not. You see, their parent company, Brash Entertainment, shut down in 2008, due to nearly all of their investors pulling out of the company. And why did they pull out of the company? Well, it's because Brash Entertainment kept publishing really bad movie license games that not only were made in less than a year, but also critically panned by pretty much everyone. And their most major critical panning was Alvin and the Chipmunks, the video game. And because the investors kept pulling out, the company had no money, so they shut down. Bottle Rocket Entertainment was able to survive another year, but in 2009 it would also shut down, finally killing the Flash game. Jeff Johns and Dan Mazo's Flash film. In 2009, Warner Bros. Hired Dan Mazo to write a film based on The Flash, with comic legend Jeff Johns serving as the film's co-writer. The film went nowhere. No, really, it just didn't go anywhere. From pretty much the second it was announced that these two were working on a Flash film, the film was rumored to be cancelled. Not a great look, honestly. Mazo would shoot down rumors of the film being cancelled, and even revealed that the film was going to be heavily based on the Flash's time during the Silver Age of comics. But by June 2010, it was confirmed that both writers were off the project, in favor of the writers of the 2011 Green Lantern film. And sadly, this is all we know about this cancelled Flash film. Ragdoll. First appearing in the Flash Comics, issue 36, released in December of 1942, Peter Merkel was born triple-jointed. This allowed him to contort himself and bend his limbs in weird ways. Before becoming a supervillain, he spent most of his time working as a carnival dancer. However, when the carnival went out of business, he became homeless. He then decided to rob a store. How would he do that? Well, by disguising himself as a rag doll and being brought into the store. And surprisingly, it worked. That's when he became Ragdoll. Word spread around about him, and eventually criminals would come to him and ask him for help with their crimes. However, when he decided to move to Keystone City, he came into conflict with Jay Garrick's Flash, and afterwards became a recurring villain for the Flash. He would continue being a villain of the Flash long after Garrick stopped being the main Flash, facing off against both Barry Allen and Wally West. He also went on to become a founding member of the second generation of the Secret Society of Supervillains. He continued to be a menace for quite some time, until eventually his ligaments began to collapse, meaning that he couldn't do all of his contorting stuff anymore. But luckily for him, he had a cult that could help him do crimes. And so, after being killed by the hero Starman, his cult members revived him with the help of a demon named Neron, who also restored the doll's youth. These cult members were fiercely loyal to Ragdoll, to the point where if he told them to blow themselves up, they would. And they did. As for Ragdoll's abilities, as mentioned before, he can contort his body into weird shapes and angles. He also seemingly had superhuman agility, as he's been shown to dodge bullets. Ragdoll would make his return in The Flash issue 68, released in June 2019, and has basically done nothing. He's now an inmate at Arkham Asylum, and that's kind of it. He's only appeared about 3 times, and all of these appearances have just been cameos. And before anyone asks, yes, Peter Merkel had a kid named Peter Merkel Jr., who also became a supervillain named Ragdoll. However, I decided not to talk about them because they're mostly a Batman villain instead of a Flash villain. As for his appearances in other media, Ragdoll has exclusively appeared in the Flash CW series. The Flash's wife is a two-timer. In The Flash issue 203, released in February of 1971, Iris West's backstory is revealed. Turns out, she's not from the 20th century, but instead was born in the 30th century. And as an infant, she was sent back in time to the 20th century to be raised by the West family. Yeah, this backstory was dropped in the New 52, and pretty much every piece of media that she's appeared in. Anyways, Iris finds out about this and gets sent into the future. Barry Allen then follows her into the future, and it turns out that Central City has become an apocalyptic desert in the 30th century. How? Well, via a nuclear attack. Turns out that's why Iris was sent back in time. Much like Superman's origin, her parents found out about the nukes and sent her back in time to save her. But unlike Superman, her parents survived. But they're in danger, as the villainous sorcerer Surik shows up to do some bad stuff. But Barry Allen beats him up and convinces the people of the future to stop fighting forever. Iris's parents then give their blessing to Iris staying in the 20th century, and that's it. Turns out Iris is from the 30th century. Afterwards, Barry tells Superman about this crazy story, and Superman's like, "That's cool that Iris has you to spend the rest of her life with, but I'm gonna die alone." And Barry's just like, "Alright, man." The Tornado Twins. First appearing in Adventure Comics issue 373, released in October of 1968, Don and Dawn Allen are the children of Barry Allen and Iris West. They live in a future filled with xenophobia and hatred towards people with powers and aliens. So Iris had them hide their powers. That was until Wally West from the past showed up and met up with them. They used their powers to save Wally from an angry mob. Why was this angry mob attacking Wally West? It was because Wally West was trying to save an alien from being executed. Afterwards, they gave Barry some of their Speed Force power so he could return to his own time. And after Wally left, they were inspired to become the superhero duo, the Tornado Twins. They continued being superheroes for quite some time. Dawn had a daughter who became the superhero XS, while Dawn had a kid named Bart Allen, who went back in time and became the hero Kid Flash. Sadly for the pair, they would eventually be killed by Dominators. As for their powers, both of them had all your standard Flash powers, like super speed, the ability to phase through objects, superhuman reflexes, etc. The pair would be introduced into the post-New 52 universe in The Flash issue 26, released in July of 2017. However, the pair were now supervillains, under the control of Reverse Flash, as part of his plan to make Barry Allen's life suck. Luckily, when the Flash family defeated the Legion of Zoom, the Tornado Twins went back to normal. They said goodbye to their parents and returned to their future, where they continued being heroes. As for their appearances in other media, the pair have never appeared in any media as the Tornado Twins. However, they've both appeared as children in Young Justice, while Dawn Allen has appeared in the Flash TV series, but as XS, not a Tornado Twin.
The Flash will continue in a moment.
'90s Flash cancelled second season. Despite the 1990s Flash TV show being cancelled after one season, there were plans for a second season. All we know about this cancelled second season is that the opening episode would have had Captain Cold, Trickster, and Mirror Master teaming up to take down the Flash. That, and the show's creators, really wanted to introduce Gorilla Grodd into the show. Sandblaster, only appearing in Blackest Night, The Flash issue 3, released in April 2010, Sandblast was a wannabe supervillain who joined up with the Rogues, extremely briefly. His only appearance was him hanging out with the second Captain Boomerang. But it turns out that Boomerang didn't really want to hang out, and instead pushed him into a pit so that his dead zombie dad could eat him. Yeah, he was feeding his zombie dad in an effort to revive him. Nobody knows what Sandblast's powers were, though it can be assumed that he just shot out sand via that gun on his back. And before you feel bad about him being betrayed by Boomerang, just know that one of the very few things we know about him is that he's an offender of children. So yeah, he deserved what he got. He would kinda be introduced into the post-New 52 universe in The Flash issue 14, released in March 2017. I say kinda because this is Sandblaster. So technically they're different characters, but I mean, Sandblast, Sandblaster, they're the same character. Anyways, Sandblaster is not an offender of anything, but he is a villain. Instead of firing off sand via a gun, he can shoot sand out of his hands. And that's kind of it. He showed up, got beat up, sent to jail, and then got beat up again. Max Mercury Quicksilver. Max Mercury is a weird character, because technically he's an adaptation of another comic character, that being Quicksilver. Not the Marvel Quicksilver, but instead the Quality Comics Quicksilver from the 1940s. First appearing in National Comics issue 5, released in November of 1940, Quicksilver was an acrobat, part of a circus, but would leave the circus around 1940 to become the superhero, the Laughing Robin Hood of crime. Not very catchy, so he changed it to Quicksilver. He spent most of his time fighting crime with his super speed powers, and hanging out with his kinda racist friend, Me. He would then join the US military and fight in World War II. Decades after Quality Comics went out of business, DC would revive the character of Quicksilver. However, because the name Quicksilver was now being used by Marvel, they had to rename him. But they didn't just rename him. They took basically just his look and powers. Everything else about the character was thrown out of the window. And that's how we got Max Mercury. Zack Snyder's Flash film. So Zack Snyder was never going to direct The Flash. However, like with the 2016 Logging Off Squad and Wonder Woman, the film was originally going to be heavily influenced by him. Like, this was going to have the same tone as BVS and stuff like that, and Zack Snyder would look over the story. All we know about this super early Snyder-influenced Flash film is that Captain Cold would have been the film's main villain. As Snyder has said that after the events of The Flash, he would have been recruited into the Legion of Doom and appear in one of the Justice League sequels. The Fiddler. First appearing in All Flash issue 32, released in January of 1948, Isaac Bowen was a thief who lived in India. After being caught and sent to prison, he met a dude who knew how to use magic to hypnotize people. Isaac was able to convince the man to teach him, and so, after learning the ability, Isaac created a homemade violin and used its music to control people. His first action was killing the man who taught him. He then fled to the United States and started doing crimes, under the name The Fiddler. Once arriving in America, he moved to Central City and became a recurring enemy of Jay Garrick's Flash. He continued his career as a villain long into the careers of the newer Flashes, like Barry Allen and Wally West. His career saw him working with a ton of other villains, like The Shade, Thinker, Solomon Grundy, Icicle, and Darkseid. Yeah, the Fiddler was an agent of Darkseid. And while working under him, he created a giant gun that was used to enslave the people of New Genesis. Afterwards, he would continue doing crimes until he eventually found out that he was dying. It turns out that the dude who taught him magic in prison was actually a demon, and he showed up to claim Isaac's soul. But he also gave Isaac the chance to take out Jay Garrick's Flash. So the pair traveled back in time to go kill him. Unfortunately for him, Hawkman, Hawkwoman, and Wally West followed him, so he was defeated. Fiddler then died and went to hell. Years later, Isaac would be revived by the demon Neron, and after he was done working for the demon, he returned to doing his musical crimes, until he was killed by Deadshot. But then he returned to life again, this time revived as a Black Lantern, and then he died again. As for Isaac's powers, he's got training in the occult, so he can use magic against his foes. One of his main magical powers is hypnotism. He does this through his violin, and only his violin. No, really, he has refused to learn any other way to use magic. He's just obsessed with the violin. He's also got a violin-shaped car, so yeah, he's pretty obsessed. He would be introduced into the post-New 52 world in The Flash issue 61, released in March 2019. He showed up once at a card game, and then died in the same issue. Awesome. As for his appearances in other media, it's a little weird. He's appeared in Justice League Unlimited and Stargirl. Actually, 2 different male Fiddlers appear in Stargirl, while 3 different female Fiddlers have appeared in The Flash and Stargirl. Izzy Bowen, Andrea Wozek, and Anya Bowen. Unlimited Powers TV pilot. In 1989, Danny Bilson and Paul DeMeo came up with the idea for a TV series starring a bunch of DC superheroes. They wrote a script to a pilot and handed it over to Warner Bros. This show was called Unlimited Powers. It would have been about a team of superheroes being led by Barry Allen. This team consisted of Green Arrow, Block, Wally West, Dr. Occult, and Green Arrow's teenage daughter. Barry would have created the team after spending 15 years in jail. The universe of Unlimited Powers was a pretty dark and depressing one, as being a superhero is illegal, so Barry and his team would have to fight crime while also being wanted by the police. Why was this world messed up? Well, because supervillains are running the show behind the scenes, with Icicle and Catwoman leading the corrupt government. Sadly for the duo, the show wouldn't be picked up. However, this led the pair to create the 1990s Flash TV series. Fat Flash. In The Flash issue 115, released in September of 1960, Gorilla Grodd fakes his death. He creates a pill that allows him to possess somebody random on Earth, while appearing to be dead. When he takes the pill, he possesses the man William Dawson. His first instinct is to get a job at a circus and begin training the chimps there. And he trains the chimps to steal things all across the city. But Flash finds out about this and shows up to stop this monkey business. And that's when Grodd uses his latest invention, a ray that makes people weigh 1,000 pounds. He uses it on Flash, and instead of killing him instantly, because I think gaining 1,000 pounds in a second would destroy your body, Flash is just fat now. He also loses his memory. So Flash is put on display in the circus's freak show attraction. Luckily, a trip to the Hall of Mirrors gives him his memory back. So in order to lose all of this weight, Flash heads over to the dehydration plant, because it turns out that all the extra weight in him is water weight. This somehow works, and Flash is back to normal. He beats up William Dawson and hands him over to the police. Meanwhile, Gorilla Grodd is just chilling in his prison cell in Gorilla City. Bizarro Flash. First appearing in Action Comics issue 856, released in November of 2007, Bizarro Flash is a creation of Bizarro. For those two people who don't know who Bizarro is, he's basically the opposite of Superman. So Bizarro Flash is the opposite of Flash. He's dumb, and he's slow, and he's a bit chubby, so yeah, he's the opposite of the Flash. He's also not the first Bizarro Flash. The first one was from Superman's girlfriend, Lois Lane, issue 74, released in May of 1967. In this story, he fell in love with Lois Lane, but as soon as Superman found out that he was a Bizarro, Bizarro Flash fled the Earth and rejoined his Bizarro friends on Bizarro World. The original Flashpoint. Released from December of 1999 to February 2000, Flashpoint is a 3-part Elseworld story written by Pat McGreal. It tells the story of Flash being the only superhero in existence. That is, until he saves John F. Kennedy from being assassinated, taking a bullet to the spine. This cripples Barry's body, but it doesn't cripple his mind, as he then decides to create a bunch of technology, like teleportation devices. Barry has people travel to Mars. There, they discover a weird artifact that turns one of the scientists who went to Mars into a speedster. That scientist being Wally West. But he doesn't get to run around and do Flash stuff. Instead, Wally West gets put into a coma and is killed by Vandal Savage. You see, Barry brought Wally to Savage in order for him to save his life. But Savage was like, "Nah, I'm gonna clone him." And when that fails, Wally dies. Though he did succeed in creating a single clone of Wally. Barry's like, "Alright, I'm gonna take away your Flash powers." So he hooks up the clone to a machine and sucks the Speed Force energy out of him. Not only does this remove Wally's powers, but it also allows Barry to walk again. He then heads over to Vandal Savage's place to beat him up, when Savage uses the artifact to send Barry into another reality. And then, almost immediately afterwards, Vandal Savage gets shot in the head by a CIA assassin. The story ends with Barry Allen living out a new life as Flash in another world. This time, in a world where he's not the only hero. Colonel Computron. First appearing in The Flash issue 304, released in December of 1981, Basil Nerblin was your average toy inventor. When one day, his boss, Willard Wiggins, stole the patent for his latest toy. Basil was, understandably, a little bit angry about this, and so he wanted revenge. So how did he get revenge? Well, he created a suit based on the toy he designed, called himself Colonel Computron, and then attempted to murder Wiggins several times. Yeah, he was just a little bit angry. Flash would show up and beat him up, but he wouldn't go to jail. Instead, he reformed and created his own toy company. Only problem was, he wasn't getting a lot of business. Knowing that he was desperate for money, the criminal organization, the Thousand Eyes, tried to contact him and get him to work for them. However, Basil's daughter intercepted the message and decided to become Colonel Computron to make money for her father. This didn't last very long at all, and Basil took back his role as Colonel Computron and allowed his daughter to run his company. So he decided to do some crime, but not for long, because Amanda Waller would recruit him for a mission to rig the Santa Prisca elections to prevent Bane from becoming president. Colonel Computron did his job, but didn't come back alive, as he betrayed Waller, and you don't betray Amanda Waller and live. Also, by this point in time, he was just a floating head. They never explain why. You're just gonna have to accept that he's a floating head. As for Computron's powers, he's got superhuman strength. This comes from the suit he wears, which is made up of a computer. He's also a genius, and can make a ton of tech, like robots and weapons. One of these weapons is literally a laser rifle that can transfer people into video games. He'd be introduced in the post-New 52 world in Legends of Tomorrow issue 5, released in September of 2016, and his origin is a bit different, as he was always a criminal, and sued a toy company that made merchandise off of his supervillain identity, Colonel Computron. Side note, I always found that weird in superhero media when toy companies would make toys of the villains and stuff like that. I'm not just talking about the Infinity Gauntlet ice cream thing from Thor 4, just in general. Why do you have an entire restaurant that's dedicated to the people who make your city a living hell? It's just such a weird thing. I don't know. As for his appearances in other media, he's only appeared in CW's The Flash. Cancelled 2003 live-action Flash series. Due to the success of Smallville, Warner Bros. Greenlit a Flash TV show that would have been heavily inspired by the 1960s show The Time Tunnel. The show was going to be very different from your standard Flash story, as the Flash was going to live in Gotham City and would often travel backwards and forwards in time to stop crime. There would also be no superhero costumes, because that's for babies. The only reason why this show never ended up happening is because not everyone at Warner Bros. And DC liked the idea of the show, and there was a lot of debate over how to make a Flash TV show. So Warner Bros. Decided to scrap the show and put Bart Allen into Smallville. Caveman Flash. First appearing in The Flash issue 768, released in May of 2021, Ugg is a caveman, who is also a speedster. You see, when Wally West attempted to cut himself off from the Speed Force, his consciousness was sent through time and space, and he began possessing random speedsters throughout history, like Ugg. But when he possessed Ugg, a nearby Velociraptor was hit with some Speed Force energy. I guess creationists got it right in the DC universe. Anyways, that raptor became a speedster, and the two became fast friends. After the raptor tried to kill Ugg, of course, but, who cares? Ugg decided to name him Swoosh, and the two would team up and do whatever a caveman and a dinosaur would do together. Probably beat up random things. I don't know. Their prehistoric life was put on hold for a few when Gold Beetle brought the pair into the present to help the Flash family take on the Fraction, a multiversal army trying to plunder random universes. They helped out for a bit, and after the fighting, they were sent back to their time. As for Ugg's powers, he's got your standard speedster abilities. As to how he got these abilities, we don't know. Bart Allen and Wally West become White Lanterns. So Barry Allen wasn't the only speedster to temporarily become a Lantern during the Blackest Night event. Both Bart Allen and Wally West became White Lanterns for a brief period of time. They were chosen by Hal Jordan to become White Lanterns, along with a variety of other heroes, like Green Arrow, Ice, Superman, Wonder Woman, etc. As White Lanterns, they gained a ton of abilities, like the ability to fly, create force fields, fire off energy blasts, the ability to enter wormholes, the ability to resurrect the dead, sometimes, and to see the souls of those who've recently... But when he possessed... However, they weren't White Lanterns for long, and after defeating the Black Lantern Corps, they were returned to normal. Chris Brancato and Sean Levy's Flash film. Shortly after Goyer left the Flash film in 2007, Warner Bros. Hired Chris Brancato to write the film, and Sean Levy to direct it. This version of The Flash didn't end up happening for two major reasons. The first was that Sean Levy was hesitant about making the film, because he wasn't used to making action movies. And the second was that Warner Bros. Just greenlit Justice League Mortal. The plot of their Flash film went something like this. The film would open up with Barry Allen trying to mentor Wally West, and trying to teach Wally about how helping people is epic. But Wally's just like, that's lame, I'm gonna go download a car. Sadly for Barry Allen fans, Barry would then die in a fire. Wally would try to save him, but fail, and get doused with mysterious chemicals. Years later, and Wally's an adrenaline junkie, one day he's hanging out with his aunt Iris, and she's like, by the way, did you know that Barry was the Flash? And right afterwards, they're both zapped by lightning, and Wally's given super speed powers, while Iris dies. Using these powers, Wally travels back in time to be trained by Barry. When he's done training with Barry, he heads back into the present to take on the villain, Vandal Savage, who apparently had Wally West's parents killed in a conspiracy. When he confronts him, he finds out that Savage is trying to destroy the world by using the weather so that he can reshape the world in his image. During their confrontation, Savage dies and Wally saves the day. S.T.A.R. First appearing in The Flash issue 108, released in December of 1995, S.T.A.R. was a pilot during the Cold War who tested out a top-secret supersonic jet. During a test flight, he was shot out of the sky by lightning, and when he crashed into enemy territory, he discovered that the lightning had given him superhuman speed powers. Now obsessed with his new powers, S.T.A.R. spent decades training himself in the art of super speed. His obsession with speed even led him to create a cult based around himself and speed. Wanting to become as fast as possible, he realized that he needed a teacher, or at least somebody that he could talk to that has the same powers. So he found Johnny Quick, the hero, not the villain. The two did not like each other, and began to fight, only for Max Mercury to show up and throw S.T.A.R. into the Speed Force. After this, Max Mercury decided to become a mentor figure to various speedsters, as he was worried that one day S.T.A.R. might break out of the Speed Force. And he did. Decades later, S.T.A.R. escaped and recruited Lady Flash into his cult. He had her and some other goons go around the world and defeat various speedsters, so he could transfer their connections to the Speed Force into himself, to make him the ultimate speedster. This didn't work, and Wally West led a team to go and beat him up, and throw him into the Speed Force yet again. Years later, he was able to escape the Speed Force again, but was instantly killed by Barry Allen, as at this point in time, Barry Allen was Black Flash, and could kill people by just touching them. As for S.T.A.R.'s powers, he's got all your standard speedster abilities, along with a ton of electricity powers. For example, he can create lightning blasts, and can even lend his powers to others for short periods of time. Also, he's got enhanced healing, like most speedsters do, but his healing is even more enhanced, meaning that his injuries will pretty much heal instantly. He'd be introduced into the post-New 52 world in The Flash Annual Issue 1, released in March 2018. In this new world, after he was killed by Barry, he woke up in a void, and that's where he stayed for a couple years, until he regained his connection with the Speed Force. Creating a portal to escape, S.T.A.R. then bathed in the Speed Force's energy. The Speed Force didn't really like him messing around in it, So it tried to kick him out by bringing in Wally West to beat him up. And Wally was able to rip him out of the Speed Force, beat him up, and send him to jail. As for his appearances in other media, he's appeared in both DC Legends and the CW Flash series. Avery Ho. First appearing in The Flash issue 3, released in September of 2016, Avery Ho was struck by lightning and given super speed powers. While experimenting with her powers, she was found by Barry Allen and Mina Dewan, who intended to teach her on how to use her powers for good. But early on in her training, Godspeed showed up and murdered a bunch of her fellow students. But she was able to escape and continue her training. She would eventually graduate and joined up with the China White Triad. This seemed like a pretty cool deal at first, but then she quickly found out that these guys are actually pretty bad. So she bailed, and joined up with the Justice League of China, basically becoming the Flash of China. Though that doesn't mean she exclusively fights crime in China, as she's been called in to join various teams across the globe, and multiverse. For example, she was chosen to replace Barry Allen in Justice League Incarnate. This was a multiversal Justice League team created to take on multiversal threats. She's also taken part in various event storylines, like Dark Crisis, Dark Knights, and Perfect Storm. She's also fought Gamera before. I know it's not actually Gamera, but it looks like Gamera. As for her powers, she's got all your standard Flash abilities: enhanced healing, enhanced speed, enhanced agility, etc, etc. As for her appearances in other media, she's only appeared in The Flash, but she doesn't suit up, which is very lame. Silent Running. Written by Peter Tomasi, Silent Running is an Elseworld story released in September of 1996. The story centers on two brothers, Brian and Tristan, and they're both living in a post-apocalyptic nightmare. It's the world's ended, and there's very few people left. And the few who remain are part of a cult that worships the Flash. Why do they worship the Flash? Well, it's because they were given information about him, along with the Book of Iris, from Martian Manhunter. Anyways, the cult wants to get zapped by lightning in order to harness the Speed Force. And one day, Tristan and Brian's dad get zapped. He doesn't get powers, but he returns to the cult and tells Brian that he's basically the chosen one and will be chosen by the lightning to become the next Flash. Meanwhile, Tristan is pretty jealous, and so he kills their father and calls Brian a non-believer. The two go off to bury their father in a giant hole, arguing all along the way. On their way back, they come across a giant monster that I think is meant to be Block? Anyways, they escape the monster, and they're both zapped by lightning. And surprise, surprise, Brian is chosen. Tristan is pretty mad, so he knocks his brother out and has him hooked up to a machine that allows him to live forever. This goes on for hundreds of years, as Tristan keeps Brian locked away, because the machine he's hooked up to not only keeps Tristan living forever, but it also provides power to the people. But Tristan is running a fascist government, so eventually a woman named Deborah frees Brian. Together they escape and find Martian Manhunter, who gives Brian the original Flash suit. And then Martian Manhunter leaves Earth forever. Brian confronts his brother, and the two battle it out. Their fight leads them to the hole they buried their dad in, and Tristan falls into it, dying. Afterwards, the world begins to slowly heal, as the cult now lives in comfort in a dome. But this peace has a cost. Brian has went back to the machine, and willingly hooked himself up to it. It's a pretty depressing story, but it's also part of the Legends of the Dead Earth event, so, what did you expect? Leah Nelson. First appearing in Tangent Comics' Flash, released in December of 1997, Leah Nelson was born famous, as her parents were the first people to travel to Jupiter, presumably to get more stupider. Anyways, she was born with super speed powers. Well, kinda. Those were just some of her powers. I'll talk about the other ones a little bit later. When she became an adult, she gave herself the name Flash and became a superhero. As a superhero, Leah did a bunch of superhero stuff like fight crime, but she was also a fashion model, so she had to balance the life between being a superhero and a celebrity. And unlike Iron Man, she has a secret identity, so the public doesn't know who she is. Anyways, a lot of the superhero stuff she did was multiversal, as she worked with a ton of speedsters from across the multiverse, like Jake Garrick and Wally West. One of her main enemies was Harvey Dent. No, not Two-Face. The Superman. In her reality, Harvey Dent's mind evolved and gave him superhuman abilities. Using his abilities, he took over the world, and Leah was not having any of it, so she fought against him and his corrupt government. After taking him down, she'd chill out in her universe for quite some time, until she found herself in the main DC universe, in the aftermath of Dark Knight's Death Metal. Now going by the superhero name Light Ray, Leah became an internet celebrity who quickly gained millions of fans. Though this led her to become really depressed about having to maintain her happy persona online. This led to the villain Eclipso attempting to convince her to Avengers Endgame herself. Thankfully, she didn't, and she would be recruited into Superman's new authority. However, this didn't end well for her, as she would be killed. But she didn't stay dead, as the villain Mongol revived her by fusing her body with the corpse of a demon witch queen named Mother. This turned her into the being known as the Black Razor. As for her abilities, Leah is made up of light, which gives her not just the powers of a speedster, but also energy absorption, flight, and she has the ability to fire off beams of energy. She can also produce solid holograms of herself and other objects. As for her appearances in other media, she's only appeared in CW's The Flash. The Turtle. First appearing in All Flash issue 21, released in December of 1945, the Turtle doesn't really have an origin. Nobody really knows his name. He just showed up and started fighting Jake Garrick Flash. He's also got no powers. He just plans stuff out and has other people do stuff for him. And that's why he's called the Turtle. He slowly creates plans to take down the Flash, steal money, and do all kinds of criminal stuff. However, despite being, let's be honest here, pretty lame, he somehow inspired a successor called Turtle Man. First appearing in Showcase issue 4, released in October of 1956, again, we don't really know his name, but he's way more interesting than the original Turtle, in that he actually has powers and gadgets. Inspired by the original Turtle, he began robbing banks and doing other crimes, using bombs, rays that make people slow, etc. He also wears a suit that looks like a turtle shell. This suit can create force fields and block bullets. His most interesting weapon is probably a laser gun that, if shot with, your optic nerves will cause you to see everything moving faster than they actually are. Anyways, the two turtles would actually team up to battle the Flash. However, over the course of their partnership, Turtle Man began to resent the original Turtle, as not only did he keep taking credit for his inventions, but he also treated Turtle Man like he was just a henchman, not an equal. The original Turtle would be introduced in the post-New 52 world in Justice League issue 2, released in August of 2018. And he's a lot more powerful, as he actually has powers. Similar to how Barry, Wally, etc. use the Speed Force, Turtle uses the Still Force. Using the Still Force, he can absorb energy, stop anything from moving, and create objects. He's also got superhuman strength, and his connection with the Still Force halts his aging. We also finally got an origin for the Turtle. He was a child prodigy who eventually had a family. However, because having a family meant he couldn't spend as much time working on technology and gadgets and all that science stuff, his fellow scientists began to outpace him. So he decided to investigate the Still Force to get ahead of his colleagues. His investigation went crazy, and he got caught up in a Still Force explosion. As for Turtle's appearances in other media, he appears in both Justice League Unlimited and The Flash. There's even a female Turtle in The Flash, named Frida Novikov.
The Flash will continue in a moment.
The Justice League has arrived at Burger King. One of 8 Justice League toys is now available in each Burger King Big Hits meal. And now you can get into Justice League like never before. Log on to CartoonNetwork.com and enter for a chance to be drawn into an actual Justice League comic, or to win one of 100 Justice League Adventure prize packs. Join the Justice League at CartoonNetwork.com and Burger King now.
Golden Giants. First appearing in The Flash issue 120, released in May of 1961, the Golden Giants are a species of giant gold humanoids who existed in prehistoric times. They were created by the powerful entity known as Magistry, and were sent across the universe to scout planets and moons for potential places to colonize. They normally lived in Africa and South America, and were wiped out when the two continents separated. However, some would be brought into the modern day by Abracadabra to mess around Keystone City. As for their powers, they don't really have any. Like, they're strong, because, they're giant people, basically, but they don't shoot lasers or anything like that, and even their strength isn't that crazy. Like, it's like they're stronger than normal people, but it's not like they're kaijus. Cancelled 80s live-action Flash series. In 1987, Jim Strain and Todd Holland created a screenplay for a pilot to a Flash TV series. And like with the cancelled 2003 Flash series, this show was going to be very different from any other Flash story. In the pilot, Barry Allen would be given his speedster abilities via a UFO dropping a strange spear-like object. There were multiple spears that were dropped by the UFO, which were apparently parts of the UFO. So, a shape-shifting alien arrives on Earth to collect all of the spears, and the Flash has to stop him. It's unknown why Warner Bros. Rejected the script, but it's probably because of how weird it is. Like, Flash gets his powers from aliens? It just feels kind of weird. Lightspeed. Only appearing in Flash Forward issue 4, released in February of 2020, Lightspeed is the amalgamation between Godspeed and Linda Park, Wally West's wife. We don't really know all that much about her, outside of the fact that she's from Earth-32, which is the same universe that Supermartian lives in, the guy I talked about in the Superman Iceberg. Anyways, she met up with Wally West when Wally was traveling the multiverse, and the two briefly teamed up to beat up some bad guys and purge the darkness threatening her world. One thing of note is that Wally West doesn't exist in her universe, so when Wally comes up to her and starts claiming that Lightspeed is his wife, she's a little bit confused. They also make out at the end of their adventure. Would this count as cheating? I mean, it's his wife from another universe, I don't know. Kilgore. First appearing in The Flash issue 3, released in August of 1987, Kilgore is a giant electro-mechanical organic intelligence that needs electro-life in order to live. In order to consume electro-life, it needed to consume planets. And after eradicating its home planet, Kilgore made its way through space until it eventually came across Earth. However, by the time it arrived at Earth, it was in vibrational limbo, which meant that only people traveling at Mach speed could see it. Anyways, it landed on Earth and discovered the Flash. Fascinated by the Flash, Kilgore followed the speedster to S.T.A.R Labs, and decided to take over the lab via its electrical systems. Kilgore announced to the world a message: leave North America or die. Flash wasn't really a big fan of that, so he showed up to fight Kilgore. But how do you fight a giant electro-mechanical organic intelligence? Well, with the help of Cyborg, who uses the Titan satellite to send a message to every single world government to shut down their power in order to kill Kilgore. Kilgore was not very happy, and turned itself into a giant snake monster and left the computer systems. Now that it was out of the computer systems, Flash could finally destroy him. Kinda. Its body was destroyed, but somehow Kilgore had created a computer for it to live in inside of a cave. And when the villain Maximo Lord found him, the two teamed up, and Kilgore became a menace to the Justice League. As for Kilgore's powers, it could control various pieces of technology. Also, by consuming electro-life, he can modify his body or create various bodies for himself. And finally, it's got various claws, blades, and spikes it can use to attack people. Kilgore was introduced into the post-New 52 world in Cyborg issue 1, released in November of 2016, and it's basically a cyborg villain now, although in-universe the Justice League has fought him before. It's also got new abilities, like the ability to read minds using electricity. As for its appearances in other media, it's only appeared in the Flash CW series, and Justice League X Ruby Superheroes and Huntsmen Part 1? What? Mad Max Flash. First appearing in The Flash issue 783, released in August of 2022, this Flash variant has no powers. The dude just lived his life normally. That was, until one day the Fraction invaded his world, and pretty much annihilated the entirety of the Earth. And so for 10 years, Barry Allen has been living his best life in this horrible, horrible desert apocalypse, very clearly inspired by the Mad Max franchise. And like Mr. Angry Maxie, Barry's wife in this world is dead, and he's got an epic car. But unlike maddening Maxine, he's actually able to end the apocalypse. With the help of Jesse Quick and Max Mercury, he's able to use a magical artifact called the Pearl to restore life on Earth. Finally, despite not having any superpowers, he actually does have a connection with the Speed Force. But like I said, for some reason it doesn't give him any powers. Wally West becomes Dr. Manhattan. Fun fact about me, I really don't like it when DC crosses over with Watchmen. It's fine in like one-off non-canon stuff, but like stuff like Doomsday Clock, not a fan of it. Same goes with V for Vendetta. Side note, did you guys know the entirety of Pennyworth, the origin of Batman's butler, was leading up to the 2004 V for Vendetta movie? And the show ends with London getting nuked? No, really, look into it. It's wild. Anyways, in Flash Forward issue 6, released in April 2020, Wally West sits down in the Mobius chair, in order to save his kids. This is a chair that allows anyone who sits in it to travel throughout the multiverse and observe everything. Sounds pretty cool, right? Well, if you sit in the chair, you'll quickly lose yourself. And that's kinda what happened to Wally West. You see, because Dr. Manhattan interacted with the Mobius chair in Justice League Darkseid War, when Wally sits down in it, his mind becomes fused with Dr. Manhattan's mind. Now, Dr. Wally Haddon, I'm calling him that, you can't stop me, he looks over the multiverse and discovers that the main DC timeline is damaged. This being caused by Flashpoint. And so, he decided to fix the universe. But as he tried to fix the timeline by creating a new universe built from various fragments of reality, he realized that he couldn't do it. Why? Because the Batman Who Laughs has corrupted the entire multiverse. So Dr. Wally Haddon travels to the main DC universe to help out the heroes defeat him. And during the fight against Batman Who Laughs, he disconnects from the chair and gave it to Wonder Woman in order to enact a plan she had come up with to defeat the Batman Who Giggles. As for Dr. Wally Haddon's powers, he pretty much had all of Dr. Manhattan's powers. William Dawson devolves into a gorilla. So I lied to you guys. In the Fat Flash entry, I mentioned how Gorilla Grodd was chilling in his prison cell at the end of the story. But that's not entirely true. He was in a prison cell, but not in his own gorilla body. He never actually left Dawson's body. And so, in The Flash issue 127, released in March 1962, Gorilla Grodd, as William Dawson, was released from prison. And Grodd's first instinct is to travel back to Gorilla City. So he does. But when he gets there, William Dawson's body starts to devolve into a gorilla. Why does this happen? Well, the only explanation given is that Grodd's mind is so powerful, it forced the body he was possessing to devolve into a gorilla. William Dawson would return in The Flash issue 313, released in June 1982. Somehow, he returns to life as the supervillain Psychon, and he wants to kill Grodd, because, well, he possessed him, got him locked up, turned his body into a gorilla, and then permanently stole his body. So yeah, I think his anger towards Grodd is pretty justified. Fastest Killer Alive. Only appearing in Dark Knight's Death Metal The Last 52, War of the Multiverses, what a mouthful, released in February of 2021, this variant of Wally West became a serial killer after accidentally killing his friends during an alternate version of the Heroes in Crisis event from 2019. During the Dark Knight's Death Metal event, he was transported into the main DC universe to take out the heroes in that reality. Because he had killed his reality's Teen Titans, he really wanted to kill this universe's Teen Titans. But main universe Wally West stopped him, and while confronting him, the fastest killer alive was killed by Arsenal, who was now a Black Lantern. As for his powers, the fastest killer alive pretty much just has Wally West's powers. Except now he also has guns, novels. Like with many Marvel and DC heroes, Flash has seen his fair share of novels. However, unlike Batman, Superman, or Spider-Man, his novels, for the most part, are directly tied to another piece of media. For example, a vast majority of the Flash's novels are set in the Arrowverse. Well, let me rephrase that. There are novels set in the Arrowverse, but then there's novels that take place in an alternate version of the Arrowverse. Finally, there's Flash Stop Motion, which is the only Flash novel not connected to any other piece of media. Cloud Creatures. First appearing in The Flash issue 111, released in March 1960, Flash faced off against an alien species who invaded Earth disguised as clouds. Yeah, it's pretty out there. But they're pretty weak, as they can be turned into normal clouds just by punching their nucleus. Also, I say alien, but technically they're not aliens. They actually originate from inside the Earth, and have traveled out of volcanoes to invade the rest of the world. Not only can they fire off lightning whenever they want, but they can also generate thunder so powerful that it can level entire cities. But like I said, they're pretty easy to take out, as Flash literally jumps on them to kill them all. Kinda wild that the military was getting owned by these things. 60s comics were something else, man. Inertia's Cruel Fate. So one day, Inertia got a bunch of Flash's villains to work together and create a machine that could stop time. But Inertia was actually lying to everyone, and it turns out that the machine they were building was actually able to drain the speed force from Bart Allen into Inertia. Because for those that don't know, Inertia had super speed powers, however he needed to use the drug Velocity 9 in order to actually use them. With Bart Allen's speed force abilities, he wouldn't need the drug anymore. So he set a plan into motion, and the machine actually worked. Bart Allen lost his powers. And without his powers, Flash's enemies all turned their attention to him and killed him. Mad at Inertia for tricking them, they decided to kill him. But now that he had Bart Allen's Speed Force abilities, Inertia ran off and tried to go into hiding. But then Wally West showed up and confronted Inertia, and even debated on killing him. But he decided to do something far worse. Using the Speed Force, he slowed Inertia down to the point where he was basically a living statue. He then brought him over to the Flash Museum and had him set up looking at statues of Bart Allen. Worst part about all of this is that Inertia could still see, hear, and think in real time, but he was paralyzed. Now he was doomed to spend the rest of his life standing there looking at Bart Allen statues. Until one day he was freed by Reverse Flash, so he was saved from being a living statue. Flash 3000. First appearing in Justice League 3000, issue 1, released in February of 2014, Barry Allen of the year 3000 was a clone of the original Barry Allen. In the 31st century, the Wonder Twins, alongside Aerial Masters, cloned Barry alongside Superman, Batman, Hal Jordan Green Lantern, and Wonder Woman, in order to defeat the supervillain group, the Five. The Five are a group of villains who are near godlike and have taken over the universe. So obviously the Justice League would be able to defeat them. Right? Well, kinda. Justice League 3000 did end up beating the Five, but every single member of the original group, minus Wonder Woman, was killed. Luckily, more heroes joined the team, including Terry Magnus, one of the Wonder Twins, who created the clones. Turns out, her brother was actually the founder of the Five, and so he killed her. But luckily for Terry, she was revived by Aerial Masters, using Flash's clone's DNA, which gave her the powers of Flash. She's also now in the main DC universe for some reason. Anyways, as for both the clone of Barry Allen and Terry Magnus, they have your standard speedster abilities. Jerry Lewis. So for a while, DC had a comic series about a fictional version of the comedian and actor Jerry Lewis, called The Adventures of Jerry Lewis. And in a lot of these stories, he'd meet up with characters from DC Comics, Flash being one of them. In The Adventures of Jerry Lewis issue 111, released in June 1969, Jerry and his nephew, who I'm pretty sure is not a real person, show up at a tailor to get Jerry's clothes cleaned. But when they show up, the owner is kidnapped by criminals hired by Abracadabra. They then head into the tailor and take up shop. There they discover various supervillain costumes. Turns out, all of Flash's villains are using this tailor to clean their clothes. Eventually, Captain Cold shows up, having just broken out of prison, and orders his costume. He then freezes Jerry's nephew, and Jerry's just like, okay, whatever. But then Flash shows up, having been led to the tailor thanks to a clue at a crime scene. And when he gets there, he decides to be Jerry's delivery boy, so he can get the addresses of all of his villains. Jerry's nephew then thaws out and finds Abracadabra's wand, and uses it to stab Jerry Lewis with pins. After arresting all of his villains except Abracadabra, Flash returns to the tailor, and gets stripped by Jerry Lewis. Using Abracadabra's wand, Jerry's nephew also shrinks his pants. But while there, he leaves his costume behind, and Jerry decides to start wearing it. Then Jerry's nephew uses magic to give him Flash superpowers. And that's when Abracadabra finally shows up, beats up Jerry, and confronts the nephew. But that's when Flash shows up again and kills Abracadabra. Okay, he's not dead, but he should be. Like, all of his organs are crushed. Barry Allen's Big Brain. In The Flash issue 177, released in March of 1968, while at the Central City Police Station, the Trickster, disguised as a reporter, takes a picture of the Flash with a special camera. This camera fires off radiation that's meant to make the Flash's head expand. But after taking the picture, it doesn't happen. Days go by and seemingly nothing is wrong with Barry. That is, until one day, while beating up some bad guys, Flash's head finally expands, and people are rightfully freaked out. Upon learning that the Flash won't be appearing on TV, so he won't actually see the Flash get embarrassed on national TV, Trickster gets mad and decides to go confront him. Meanwhile, Flash runs off and tries to create an antidote to cure his giant head. But nothing works, and so he starts to cry. That's when Trickster shows up, and the two begin to battle it out. However, Trickster beats him and captures Flash. In his base, Trickster explains that he's gonna make Flash's head literally explode. But he probably should have tied Flash down or something, because Flash gets up and beats him up. That's when he discovers the cure. You see, Trickster was experimenting his head expanding array on his pet bird. So using the bird's DNA, Barry's able to create a cure. So the story ends with Barry's head going back to normal, while Trickster smashes his head against his prison cell all night long. Wally West's Big Brain. In Green Lantern issue 31, released in October of 1992, while battling Gorilla Grodd, Hector Hammond, and their army of gorillas, and trying to stop them from finding a crashed meteor so they can use its power to evolve, Hal Jordan Green Lantern and Wally West Flash get mutated. This happens because the energy from Hal's Green Lantern ring and both villains' mental powers hit the meteor and energy goes everywhere. Hammond and Hal Jordan both devolve, while Grodd and Wally West evolve. And by evolve, I mean Wally West's brain grows, which makes his head expand. With his new giant head and brain, Wally can't actually move his body, as he's too weak. And now that Green Lantern is a caveman, he's become extremely violent. But using his newfound brain powers, Wally figures out a way to cure them. He takes off one of his boots and throws it at Hal Jordan. This somehow allows Wally to create a telepathic link with Hal, which allows Wally to command Hal Jordan's Green Lantern ring to cure them. Don't ask how that works because I have no idea. Anyways, now cured, they go and defeat Hammond and Grodd. Speed Demon. So in the 1990s, Marvel and DC crossed over and created a bunch of characters who were the combinations of the characters. For example, Super Soldier is Superman and Captain America combined, while Darkclaw is Batman and Wolverine combined. And of course, Barry Allen has one too. That being Blaze Allen, aka the Speed Demon. Combined with Johnny Blaze's Ghost Rider, Blaze Allen was confronted by Night Spectre, who wanted to take his soul. Blaze refused and went on with his day. Years later, he married Iris Simpson, and then Night Spectre showed up and killed her. Blaze became pretty sad and depressed, and decided to learn about magic. Eventually, he'd meet up with Merlin, who bonded him with the demon Etrigan. So yeah, Speed Demon is actually a three-way combo between Barry Allen, Johnny Blaze, and Etrigan. Anyways, now with these demon powers and magic, Blaze becomes a superhero who battled the likes of Two-Face Goblin, Dr. Doomsday, and Night Spectre. But he's not the only demon speedster. Wally West also exists in this universe, and was bonded to the demon Zarathos, thus becoming Kid Demon. Kid Demon is yet another three-way combination character, this time between Wally West, Zarathos, and Dan Ketch's Ghost Rider. Oh, and there's also Mercury, who's a combination between Bart Allen and Quicksilver. Crackle, first appearing in The Flash issue 136, released in April of 1998, Crackle is a very weird creature. You see, when Wally West was a kid, he had an imaginary friend named Crackle. He created this friend after messing around with the radio and hearing the crackle of radio static. But it turns out that Wally didn't actually create Crackle. He may have given him a name, but Crackle was actually an alien creature from another dimension, and Wally was able to hear him through the radio. Wally found out about this when some evil aliens abducted both Wally and Crackle, and had them compete in a race. Whoever lost the race would have their planet destroyed. But neither one of them actually wanted to race, so Wally came up with a plan to pit the two aliens against each other. He bet the aliens that he could beat them to Earth, and so the race was on. But there was one problem. Wally wasn't fast enough to beat the aliens. So Crackle gave up his life and gave Wally all of his energy in order to make sure that Wally won the race, and saved both of their planets. Now you're probably wondering, why does Crackle look like Sonic the Hedgehog? And it's actually simple. Crackle was heavily inspired by Sonic. Crackle would be introduced in the post-New 52 world in Justice League of America's Vibe, issue 1, released in April 2013. He was first seen captured by Argus, but was luckily able to escape. But in the post-New 52 world, Crackle wasn't the only member of his species to appear. Kriz Zap has also appeared, and he's a Green Lantern. There's also Zips, who's a criminal. Death Touch. In the Flash Annual, released in September of 1987, Wally West travels to Hong Kong to learn how to master his inner chi and learn the ability Death Touch. When he arrives there, he's trained by a master called the Wizened Sage. Now, Wally's only doing all this because some dude who owned a Chinese restaurant told him that he should. This guy also told Wally a fun little story about how the Chinese government has been hunting down kung fu masters who teach the Death Touch. Anyways, back in Hong Kong, while learning how to master his chi and learn the ability of the Death Touch, a member of the Chinese government named the Voice of the Revolution busts in and tries to kill the sage, but fails. Then his sister shows up, Dance of the Revolution. Turns out, she actually got there a day earlier, and instead of immediately trying to kill the sage and Flash, she pretended to be a woman named Lin May, a refugee that Flash met earlier, and bangs Flash. But all of that was yesterday. Now she's trying to kill the Flash. And surprisingly, she's actually able to beat up Wally a little bit. That is, until Wally masters his chi and uses it to defeat her. But during the fight against both the Voice and Dance of the Revolution, the Sage has been fatally injured. But then, randomly, the owner of the Chinese restaurant that Flash met at the beginning of the story shows up and heals the Sage. Wally leaves Hong Kong and promises to return to learn the Death Touch. He never does. The Barry Allen Story. Written by Mark Wheatley and Alan Gross, The Barry Allen Story is an Elseworld story released in October of 1994. In this story, Captain Cold shows up and starts to freeze Central City. You know, a classic little Flash story. But things take a turn for the worse when Wally West gets frostbite and has to be brought into a hospital. But luckily, Barry was able to defeat Captain Cold. But Captain Cold's machine that he's using to freeze Central City won't shut down. So Barry has Captain Cold come with him to shut down the Ice Age machine. However, while shutting it down, the machine explodes, killing Barry, while Captain Cold hides in an escape pod. Barry's death hurt Wally West immensely, as he blamed himself for not being there to help him. And in the 10 years after his death, Wally became so depressed about that event that he became paralyzed from the waist down due to psychological paralysis. He also became a heavy drinker while directing a film based on the Flash's death. Why was he trying to create a film about Barry Allen's death? Well, it's because Captain Cold wrote a book called Speed Demon. This book painted Barry Allen in an extremely negative light, and tried to make Captain Cold look like the victim. And the media ate that story up. So Wally wanted to set the record straight. But luckily, not everyone ate it up. Batman shows up in the story and tells people that Cold is full of it. While filming the movie, Captain Cold shows up as an advisor to the film, and things don't go well. Wally was already snapping at actors who weren't taking the film seriously, but now that Cold was here, his movie was in jeopardy, as Cold was once again lying about everything. Cold was able to take control of directing certain scenes, and even went on talk shows to advertise his book, while working on the film. Finally, Wally had enough, and confronted Cold. The two fought over a phone, and due to the scuffle, the phone falls into a puddle. Cold then grabs the phone, and tries to use it, but it electrocutes him. And that's when Wally gets up. He can now walk again, and he makes the film the way it should be. The film is a huge success, and Barry Allen's legacy is secured. Wally then becomes an extremely popular director, with his wife Linda even dubbing him the fastest director alive.
The Flash will continue in a moment.
Wield their powers. Feel their fury. Fight for justice. When the world needs heroes, no one else is in their league. Justice League Heroes.
Gorilla Grodd Flash. Only appearing in The Flash issue 750, released in May 2020, while traveling through dimensions, Barry Allen found one universe in which Gorilla Grodd was the Flash. And that's it. He doesn't really do anything besides save some people. He's never appeared again, and he's got all your standard speedster abilities. Except, he's also a gorilla. Stan Lee's The Flash. In the early 2000s, Stan Lee teamed up with DC Comics to create a 13-issue series called Just Imagine. The idea behind this series was that in each issue, Stan Lee would give his own take on a classic DC character, like Superman, Wonder Woman, Batman, Catwoman, Robin, Shazam, Green Lantern, etc. And of course, there was the Flash. Stan Lee's Flash was a woman named Mary Maxwell. Bored out of her mind at college, all she wanted to do was become a superhero like the comics she read. Well, she gets that chance one day when a bunch of people from the organization S.T.A.R show up to kill her father for being a very important scientist. Mary and her father escape in a rocket car and go into hiding in Australia. But S.T.A.R finds them pretty quickly, and they're forced to escape again. This time via boat. Except while trying to escape, they find themselves in a green ocean. Mary accidentally falls into it, and is now losing her energy rapidly. So her dad decides to take some DNA from a dead hummingbird and inject it into his daughter. Somehow this works, and she's cured. But then, S.T.A.R shows up, and they're finally able to kill him. Somehow, the hummingbird DNA gives Mary speedster abilities, and she's able to escape S.T.A.R. Using her newfound powers, she decides to become the superhero, The Flash, and goes after S.T.A.R directly. As for her powers, she's got all your standard speedster abilities, alongside a bulletproof outfit. Cancelled NES game. So I can't really find much information about this. In 1993, there was apparently a Flash game that was cancelled, and it was supposed to be for the NES. The only thing I was able to find out was that it was going to be published by THQ. And since THQ published the Game Boy port of the Sega Master System Flash game, I'm going to assume that this cancelled game was simply going to be an NES port of that game. The Breakaway Bandit. Only appearing in the Flash issue 158, released in February of 1966, Zebedon Czar was an alien thief who specialized in stealing and reselling weapons. On one mission, he realized the weapons he stole had trackers on them, so he dropped them off on Earth, with one of them ending up in Central City. But when Zebedon showed up to recollect the weapon, having found a way to deactivate the trackers, Flash destroys the weapon, which really ticks Zebedon off. So he attacks him, and the two briefly fight it out, until Flash is captured. He was only able to capture Flash after Flash punched the dude's head off, and that stunned him with shock for a little bit. Yeah, Zebedon is part of an unnamed alien species that's able to remove parts of their bodies whenever they want. Their legs, arms, head, and even their upper torso can be removed, and put back on anytime they want. And this is why Zebedon named himself the Breakaway Bandit. After capturing the Flash, he reveals to Barry that he's going to sell him into slavery as a weapon destroyer, and that his brain is in his hair. So Flash breaks out, they start fighting again, and the fight ends with Flash squeezing the dude's hair, which knocks him out. And eventually the space police show up to capture the Breakaway Bandit. While he never returned, it wouldn't surprise me if the character Arm Fall Off Boy was partially inspired by this dude. Jesse Quick gets trolled. During the Terminal Velocity storyline, which ran from November of 1994 to April of 1995, Wally West asks Jesse Quick to become the main Flash, if anything were ever to happen to him. This, of course, was a huge deal for Jesse Quick. She was honored to be given this opportunity. But then Wally revealed that he was just lying. Turns out that he only told Jesse Quick that she could become the new Flash was to make Bart Allen jealous, and get him to take his role as the future Flash more seriously. Jesse Quick was pretty mad at this. Obviously, like who wouldn't be? But she still helped the Flash family stop the Cobra Cult. After the event, Jesse was still pretty mad about it, which caused Wally to be mad at her. But luckily, the two talked it out, with Wally apologizing. Johnny Thunder. So Johnny Thunder is an old-school DC cowboy hero, and he has no powers. He's just a cowboy who shoots the bad guys. He's got nothing to do with the Flash. However, Johnny Thunder of Earth 18 does have something to do with the Flash. First appearing in the Multiversity Guidebook released in January of 2015, this Johnny Thunder is a speedster, and his universe is Flash. He's part of the Justice Riders, basically the Justice League but in a steampunk western world. And because it's a steampunk western world, he rides a robot horse, so that's pretty cool. He also still uses guns, so I don't think he has an issue with killing people. He's also not the only speedster in his group. The Trigger Twins are also speedsters, who are also based on Golden Age DC Western characters. Johnny Thunder and the Trigger Twins would later be recruited into the Flashes of the Multiverse, which, as the name suggests, is a multiversal Flash group. But sadly for Johnny Thunder, he got killed by Reverse Flash. The Cosmic Motorcycle. The Cosmic Motorcycle is a motorcycle that can be used to travel the multiverse. It's owned by the hero Hot Pursuit, who's really an alternate universe Barry Allen. And he used the Cosmic Motorcycle to travel to the main DC universe to warn Barry Allen about the upcoming Flashpoint event. But yeah, it's a multiverse traveling machine that looks and acts like a motorcycle, and can also transform into a police baton. Neat. Gorilla Grodd eats Reverse Flash. During the Out of Time event, a variant of Gorilla Grodd captured his universe's Daniel West Reverse Flash and ate him. No, really, he kept him locked up for a bit, and then devoured his brain in order to gain all of his intelligence and knowledge on the Speed Force and time travel. And somehow this worked, and not only was the knowledge transferred over, but also his Speed Force abilities. And so, Gorilla Grodd made his way through time. To do what exactly? Well, to eat more people, as he straight up ate Thawne Reverse Flash's brain. However, Grodd's time traveling was actually fracturing the Speed Force, so eventually the Flash from the Out of Time event showed up and killed him. Reverse Flash's family. Originally, the storyline Flash Rebirth was going to deal with the Flash family facing off against Reverse Flash and his family. Not like the Legion of Zoom, but like an actual family of speedsters, including a wife, a daughter named Marathon, oh my god, and Inertia, filling in for the Sun role. This was done because artist Ethan Van Sciver, yeah, the Comicsgate idiot, who illustrated this story, felt Reverse Flash wasn't very intimidating when he had to face off against the entire Flash family. However, this didn't end up happening due to the New 52 beginning shortly after Flash Rebirth. Wooden Man. Only appearing in All Flash issue 19, released in June of 1945, Wooden Man is a very weird villain because he's built from the remains of a sarcophagus. Now, this wasn't the spirits of the Egyptian pharaoh who was inside of it, but instead, the sarcophagus assembled into a humanoid form by a random garbage collector and his nephew, and given life by the goddess Isis. Now, how did the sarcophagus end up in the trash? Well, because the wife of the man who purchased it accidentally threw it out, as you do. Anyways, Wooden Man was given life so that he could help people. However, because of his simple mind, he didn't really know right from wrong. So when some bad guys showed up and asked him to help them do crime, he was like, okay, that sounds fun. Flash then showed up, they got into a little scuffle, and Flash ended up literally ripping him apart limb from limb, and had the dude who bought the sarcophagus in the first place seal up the pieces of the Wooden Man in a vault so it could never be revived. Bit of an overreaction. I don't know why Jake Garrick just didn't, teach him right from wrong. Kentucky Fried Chicken presents The Colonel of Two Worlds. This is a one-shot released in December of 2015, and was written by Tony Bedard and Shane Edwards. Well, I say one-shot, but it's actually just part of the DC KFC storyline that began with KFC Presents The Colonel's Adventure Comics. Anyways, in the story, Flash and Green Lantern come face to face with Colonel Sanders and his evil multiverse counterpart, Colonel Sunder, from Earth 3, the same universe as the Crime Syndicate of America. Mirror Master and Captain Cold get recruited by Colonel Sunder to do some evil stuff, like run Easy Fried Chicken, a fried chicken restaurant where everyone is sad as they gotta eat factory-made food. This is making Colonel Sanders pretty mad because it's ruining his public image. So he storms off to go beat up Colonel Sunder. Meanwhile, Colonel Sunder has a bunch of criminals rob places for him, and that's when Flash and Green Lantern show up to beat them up, and they both see that all the criminals are wearing Easy Fried Chicken hats, so they track down Sunder to his base. This is where they meet up with Colonel Sanders. Sanders isn't the only one mad at Sunders, as both Captain Cold and Mirror Master are mad that they're just being used to run the restaurant, and that Sunders has no plan on conquering the world. He just wants to rob people to build more restaurants. So Colonel Sanders storms the restaurant and beats up Colonel Sunders, while the superheroes escort the people out of the building. Also, Captain Cold and Mirror Master do nothing. They just kind of sit back and watch. The story ends with Flash, Captain Cold, Green Lantern, Mirror Master, and Colonel Sanders chilling out at KFC eating some fried chicken. Flash tries to recruit Colonel Sanders into the Justice League, while Sanders forces Captain Cold and Mirror Master into community service. Man, I sure do like it when KFC does some really wacky things, like crossing over with DC, making a video game console, posting memes, and making an anime visual novel. That's so funny. I really love it when corporations do this kind of relatable humor. Okay, Colonel Grodd in the sequel to this comic is actually pretty funny, I'll give him that. Skeleton Flash. Only appearing in Tales from the Dark Multiverse, Dark Knight's Metal, released in February of 2021, this variant of Barry Allen was your standard Flash for a while, until the demon Barbados showed up. Now calling himself Deathwave, he was consuming realities, and Flash was killed by Deathwave when his universe was destroyed. However, he was brought back to life by the Speed Force, who reanimated his skeletal remains in order for him to continue the fight against evil. Skeleton Flash lived in the ruins of his universe for a bit, until eventually being recruited by Duke Thomas into a new multiversal Justice League in order to defeat Deathwave. And during the final battle, Skeleton Flash perished while trying to save Green Lantern. As for his abilities, he's got all of Barry Allen's standard abilities, but that's only because of a strange floating device that follows him around, giving him the connection to the Speed Force, and presumably what's keeping them together. Barry Allen thinks that he's an 8-year-old. In The Flash issue 198, released in April of 1970, Barry Allen shows up to the local orphanage to perform for them. While there, he comes across some teenagers who aren't really impressed with his tricks. So they ask Flash to bring them to their old neighborhood. Flash, desperate for these teenagers' approval for some reason, takes them there. And while rebuilding their old clubhouse, he discovers a box filled with money, and that's when some criminals show up, and they start to fire at the Flash. And while they don't directly hit him, a bullet gets ricocheted and grazes Flash's head. Immediately after this, he runs away with the teenagers, and the teens discover that Flash has mentally regressed to the age of 8, and for some reason, animals just really seem to like him. The teens have no idea how to get Flash back to normal, so they just try to hide out with him for a little bit. Eventually, the criminals find them, and throw smoke bombs into the cave they're hiding in. In an act of desperation, Flash prays to God and begs him for his memories back. And, it works. Right afterwards, Barry gets his memories back and is easily able to defeat the crooks. The story ends with Flash going home and sleeping in his costume, presumably getting a bunch of cave dust and grass on the bed. But Iris doesn't really seem to mind, as apparently the Flash is sleeping like a baby. Night Flash. First appearing in The Flash issue 783, released in August of 2022, this variant of Barry Allen is a combination between Barry and Batman. In this universe, both of Barry's parents are killed in front of him by a crime lord who wanted to steal a serum being worked on by Barry's father that allowed people to heal quickly. Just as his mother is shot, lightning strikes the lab they're in, and everyone in there except for Barry and the crime lord dies. This lightning bolt gives Barry his powers, but it also gives the crime lord, Knives Maroney, super speed powers as well. But weirdly for Knives, he's now aging in reverse. As for Night Flash's abilities, he's got all your standard speedster abilities. He just kinda looks like Batman now. Mopey. So superhero comics are no stranger to retcons. Some retcons are received well, while others are hated, and one of the more infamous retcons is that of Mopey. First appearing in The Flash issue 167, released in February of 1967, Mopey is part of the organization the Heavenly Helpmates. Basically, they're magical entities that help people. And so, one day Mopey decided to help Barry Allen out by directing some lightning towards Barry while he got some chemicals splashed on him. So yes, Barry Allen only got his powers because of this dude named Mopey. But it turns out that Mopey messed up when he helped Barry out, and he now has to take away Barry's powers, because Barry didn't own the chemicals that were used on him. So Barry then has to do a bunch of jobs to earn enough money to buy the chemicals that turned him into the Flash. And after doing that, Mopey gives him his powers back. As you can probably expect, nobody really liked this retcon. And so, Mopey was never mentioned again until an issue of Ambush Bug, where it's implied that Mopey didn't actually give Barry his powers. However, Mopey would eventually return in the post-New 52 universe in The Flash issue 771, released in August of 2021, where it's revealed that events similar to the original Mopey story did happen in the New 52. All Flash, no substance. At one point in the late 2000s, there were plans for a Flash miniseries called All Flash, which would have focused on Wally West and his children. But this miniseries got cancelled. Why? Well, according to Ethan Van Sciver, I promise this is the last time I'll mention that loser, DC's editors were scared that if people didn't like the book, they would use the phrase, all Flash, no substance in reviews. and that fear alone is what killed the book. Although I personally doubt this, I'm sure there were more important factors at play, especially since this wouldn't have been the first comic to be called All Flash. Berlanti, Green, and Guggenheim's Flash film. As mentioned earlier, Green Lantern 2011 writers Mark Guggenheim, Michael Green, and Greg Berlanti were hired to create a script for The Flash. This film would be set in the same continuity as Green Lantern 2011, because fun fact, that film was meant to start the DCEU. Anyways, this film would have starred Barry Allen, as he worked at S.T.A.R Labs, alongside his friend, Thawne, who was actually responsible for Barry getting his Flash powers, because of a particle accelerator he built going crazy. So he helps Barry test out and train his powers. That is, until Captain Cold shows up and starts killing people in Central City. But he's not called Captain Cold, because apparently that's too silly, so his name is just Cold. So Flash ends up killing him, and eventually it's revealed that Cold was hired by Thawne, who is Reverse Flash. He killed Barry's mommy and framed his dad so he could create this timeline's Barry Allen, so he could one day steal Barry's Speed Force abilities. He wants to do this in every single reality, so one day Barry Allen will be erased from all of reality. The two battle it out for a while, and they start going through multiverses. Instead of seeing awful CGI recreations of dead people, Barry sees a universe where his family is alive, but decides not to go there. The fight ends with Barry trapping Thawne in the Speed Force. Ryan Reynolds' Hal Jordan would then show up and go, not bad. This film would be scrapped, and no casting information was ever released to the public. Wally West and Fidel Castro are friends. In The Flash issue 21, released in December of 1988, Wally West and Chunk are sent to Cuba in order to investigate a signal coming from the country. The plane carrying them is shot down, and Wally discovers Fidel Castro and a few Cuban soldiers hiding out in the jungle. Turns out, an alien species known as the Durlans have taken control of Cuba and are planning on attacking the USA. To make matters worse, the aliens are shapeshifters, so Wally, Chunk, and Castro can't trust anyone. Wally then comes up with a plan to save Cuba from the aliens. Wally has Castro ride him. I'm sorry, I couldn't help myself. He has Castro hop on his back and races into Havana, where they find the alien Castro. He then replaces the alien Castro with the real Castro in a millisecond. And then the real Castro tells the aliens to reveal themselves. Thinking that this is the alien Castro, the aliens reveal themselves. The Cuban government and people then begin to fight back against the aliens and take back control of their country. As a thank you for helping them save Cuba, Fidel Castro hosts a birthday party for Wally. It's also a costume party, so Barry's surrounded by dudes dressed up as his friends and enemies. How cool. Also, Barry's mom starts hitting on Castro. Flash stops Robot John Wilkes Booth from assassinating Robot Abraham Lincoln. In The Flash issue 210, released in November of 1971, Barry and Iris return to the 30th century to visit Iris's parents. If you remember, Barry convinced everyone in the future to be peaceful. Though I guess this didn't apply to robots, as a robotic replica of John Wilkes Booth assassinates a robotic replica of Abraham Lincoln. Flash chases after Robot Booth, as Booth is attempting to flee to the other half of the world. So why exactly do they build a Robot Lincoln and Robot Booth? Well, Robot Lincoln was built to bring the world together, as by this point in time, Earth is split down the middle, East versus West. The leader of the East half of Earth really didn't want the world to be together, so he built a Robot John Wilkes Booth and sent him to go kill Robot Lincoln. And after returning to East Earth, Robot Booth is betrayed and killed by his creator. But then it's revealed that Robot Lincoln didn't die. Turns out the laser gun used to kill Robot Lincoln didn't kill him, but instead collected Robot Lincoln's atoms, which allowed Abe to rebuild himself later to defeat the leader of East Earth. And right before the leader of East Earth kills him, Flash comes in and vibrates Robot Lincoln through the planet to safety. What a way to end the Iceberg. And there's another iceberg done, ladies, gentlemen, and MBs. I'll be honest, before making this video, I didn't really know, like, a super ton about The Flash. Like, I knew that, you know, about Wally West and, like, Barry Allen, Linda Park, Gorilla Grodd, Reverse Flash, all the Reverse Flashes. Like, I knew all that kind of stuff, like the basics, right? It's similar to the Superman iceberg, but although with Superman, I wasn't really, like, I was kind of indifferent to the character. I've grown to like Superman now. I do like Superman now. But with Flash, I've always liked him. I just, for some reason, I've just never really read a lot of his stuff, and I have never watched the CW series. I've heard that, like, the first 3-4 seasons are good, but, like, I don't know, man. That's just, like, 20 plus season, like 20 plus episode seasons, which with each episode being an hour long. That's just a lot of that's a lot to ask of, like, somebody. So I don't know, man. The reason I bring all this up is because a lot of the stuff in this iceberg was, like, I was discovering and learning it while researching it. Like with, like, Batman and, like, the Spider-Man icebergs, Call of Duty one especially, and Star Wars. Like, I pretty much knew everything. Like, I knew everything that I was, like, writing. Like, I didn't learn anything new per se, for the most part, at least. There's, like, one or two things in, like, the Spider-Man iceberg or something. But with the Flash, I learned a lot. I learned a lot from, like, you know, wikis, fan sites, YouTube videos, all that kind of stuff. So through it, I've really grown to appreciate the Flash a lot more. I mean, like I said, I liked him, but, like, I really, really appreciate the character now. I think he has a really cool rogues gallery, to be honest with you. Like, I really like Captain Cold. I think he's pretty cool. Like, you know, pun not intended, obviously. Reverse Flash is great. All the Reverse Flashes are pretty cool. I really like how they take care of Thawne at the very end of the storyline where he takes over Barry, or tries to take over Barry, like the whole Legion of Zoom stuff. I don't know if that's a controversial thing. I just thought that was, like a cool scene. So yeah, leave a comment below. What's your favorite Flash story? What's your favorite Flash villain? Who's your favorite Flash? Honestly, I'm probably always gonna say Wally West, for me at least, and that's mainly the DCAU talking. I really like the Flash in the DCAU. In fact, if I was, like, given a choice to, like, have, like, DC Warner Brothers make an animated series set in the DCAU, like, you know, when Justice League was airing in, like, the early 2000s, and, like, I was given a choice of the Justice League members, Flash would probably be my number one pick, followed by probably Wonder Woman, and then Jon Stewart Green Lantern. So one more time, if you liked the video, leave a like, subscribe. I got plenty more superhero icebergs on the way. I got plenty more icebergs in general. Next month is going to be another superhero iceberg, but it's not going to be like this one, or like the Superman, Iron Man, or any of that kind of stuff. It's going to be the MCU part 2. Because after Secret Invasion, I feel like, because, like, now there's a break between Secret Invasion and Loki season 2. So I think, like, now is the right time to do, like, an update on the original iceberg. Well, not like an update, but, you know, like a part 2. That's all I got to say. Hope you guys enjoyed. Have a good one. Stay safe and all that. And I'll see you guys in the next one.